Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Research shows that loneliness and isolation can have negative effects on our mental and physical health. Our nation's veterans are not immune. To combat this issue, the VA has developed something called the Compassionate Contact Corps. It's a program pairing volunteers with lonely and socially isolated vets. Let's talk more about this program with Prince Taylor. He is Deputy Director of the VA's Center for Development and Civic Engagement. To discuss this program and more, Prince Taylor, good morning. Thank you for joining us. How serious?
Good morning. How are you?
Is that? Doing well, thanks. How serious of an issue is this?
Well, unfortunately, research reveals that loneliness is prevalent across an array of populations. And so even the U.S. Surgeon General before COVID mentioned that we were at risk of an epidemic of loneliness. And so at VA, we look at all of that through the lens of veteran care. And we know that our veterans are more susceptible because of high trauma, high stress, burnout, and even some clinical issues where they actually might feed off of each other. And so all of those things put our veterans at greater risk for clinical conditions such as depression, heart disease, and suicidal ideation.
So, Prince, tell me about this program, the VA's Compassionate Contact Corps program.
Yes, well, it is a virtual, award-winning, non-clinical social prescription program where we pair trained volunteers with veterans that are lonely or socially isolated that have been referred to the program by their VA clinician.
Okay, and what kind of feedback have you received about this program? You said it's award-winning, apparently.
Yeah, more than apparent. It is, yes, it's award-winning. The feedback we've received has been overwhelmingly positive. Our veterans, some of them, this is the only legitimate phone call that they get that week, that month, and so they really appreciate it. But we also have veterans in the program that are happily married. So you can be happily married and still experience quite a bit of loneliness because there are these different spheres of loneliness. We've done a survey, and over 85% of our veterans told us that the program makes them feel less lonely. And over 92% said it makes them feel that the VA cares about their overall well-being, which is great because that goes to speak to our trust scores with our vets. And I would also say that it's not just the veterans and their families and their caregivers that benefit from the program. So do our volunteers, so do our clinicians, and we've also gotten a lot of great feedback from some of our partner organizations like American Red Cross, American Legion Auxiliary, and AARP.
How much of this has been exacerbated by the pandemic where we all had to lock down, we all had to be separated, that sort of thing?
That's a great question. We don't have the exact numbers for that, but we do know that our numbers with participation in the program have continued to increase. Since the pandemic started, we have reached over 3,000 veterans across the country with about 1,100 volunteers. And last year, they made over 13,000 phone calls around the country.
Is this program specifically designed for older veterans?
That's another very interesting question. Initially, it was designed just for the older veterans and their caregivers, but right now we have veterans from their early 20s all the way into their 90s participating.
That's great news. Okay, so we've let our viewers kind of know a little bit about this program. Where can veterans, where can volunteers go and get more information?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, let me say that our volunteers are priceless to us. They can get into the program or any of our other great volunteer opportunities by reaching out to their local VA medical center right there in Memphis, or they can go to volunteer.va.gov online. And for our veterans and their families, they can just let their VA clinician know that they're interested in the program. It's really that simple.
Okay, well, listen, Prince Taylor, we really appreciate you, and thank you for informing us about this great program and award-winning program that's helping veterans out there. We appreciate it.
Thank you for helping us get the word out. Really appreciate you.
You got it.
Good morning and happy Monday. We have some clouds in place this morning. Those will be clearing over the next few hours as a high pressure system moves in. That results in sinking air, which gives us a clear sky. That high pressure system, though, moves east as a low pressure system that will disrupt our weather, bring some rain in on Tuesday. Eventually, that low and that front push off to the east. So by Wednesday, we're done with the heavy rain, but on the back side of that low pressure system on Wednesday, we'll still have clouds and maybe even a little bit of drizzle. 20% chance on Wednesday, but an 80% chance of that rain on Tuesday. So let's check out timing. So today, as I mentioned, it's dry. We'll get more and more sunshine as we get a little later in the day. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures around 50, and then overnight tonight into early tomorrow. A few clouds, but still no rain at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So if you have plans to head out the door 7, 8 o'clock, you won't have any rain to contend with. But by the afternoon, this is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, rain pushes in from the southwest again with that low pressure system. You'll have on and off rain continuing pretty much the rest of the day on Tuesday. One of those soggy days where you want to have an umbrella or a rain jacket on hand all day. Where you see this pink color here, that's actually some sleet mixed in Harrisburg, Dyersburg, Tipton, Lauderdale County, and as well as like Blytheville, also seeing some of that sleet. Temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 50s. Yes, you can still get sleet falling with temperatures that far above freezing, but it won't stick, obviously. It'll hit the ground and melt immediately. We could still see some of that in those northern counties through late that night, but most of us will just see rain, and you'll still have some lingering showers, probably through at least 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. By the time you get out the door on Wednesday morning, 7, 8 a.m., as I mentioned, you'll just have some drizzle left over. Here are those rainfall totals. About a ½ inch in Wynne, an inch in Memphis, close to 1.5 inches in Marks and Oxford, Holly Springs, Corinth. Good soaking for us, but no severe weather to deal with. You may have some gusty winds and some rumbles of thunder, but that would be the extent of that on Tuesday. Here's today's forecast. Sunshine, 44 degrees at noon, 50 at 3, mid 40s at 5, and lower 40s by 7 tonight. But your high today is 50 degrees, average is 51. So we're right where we should be for a high temperature. Same with that low tonight around 32 in Memphis. Outside of Memphis, though, in the 20s for most spots, 29 in Covington and Ripley, 27 degrees in Alamo, right around 30 in Holly Springs, 32 in Tunica and Clarksdale, 31 in Olive Branch tonight, lower 30s in Marion, and upper 20s if you're in Blytheville this evening. And then this weekend, temperatures in the 50s, so we actually get a little increase in temperatures for the weekend. It looks mostly dry on Saturday. Could squeeze out a stray shower on Saturday evening, but Sunday's really the main day with rain. Right now we have it at a 40%, so this many days out, it's looking pretty likely that we'll have some showers on Sunday. This today and tomorrow we're around 50 degrees, and then temperatures really drop off behind that front. So Wednesday, your high is only 44, and with some winds still at about 30 miles per hour out of the north, probably feel more like 34 degrees on Wednesday afternoon, 45 on Thursday, and then 50s Friday through the weekend.
Okay, after pleas from the family of Tyre Nichols will soon see the body cam footage of the traffic stop that took their loved one's life. Cindy Hawkins reports.
We are standing for justice.
The Southern Christian Leadership Conference organized Sunday to show support to Tyre Nichols' family. Nichols was stopped by Memphis police for reckless driving on January 7th. Police say after 2 reported confrontations with officers during the traffic stop, Nichols was taken to the hospital where he died 3 days later.
We want to make sure that this never happens again.
Sunday's meeting came just 2 days after 5 MPD officers were terminated for the roles they played in the incident.
We still have a ways to go in this process. We want to make sure that the family know that SCLC stands behind them and that we stand for justice.
Monday, Nichols' family and their attorney, Ben Crump, are expected to view the video of the incident on January 7th. When it comes to next steps,
we want to make sure that that this family is compensated with justice as far as it relates to the crime that was perpetrated against their family member.
In Memphis, Sydney Hawkins, Action News 5.
And many are asking when the public will see the body cam footage. Last Friday, the Shelby County District Attorney's Office said in part, quote, "Our office understands the reasonable request for the public to view the video. However, we must ensure we abide by appropriate laws so that we will not jeopardize an ongoing investigation. We'll be sure to update the public throughout this process." There is the statement right there that I just read. Something else we're following here is what happened yesterday morning outside the Gold Strike Tunica Casino. Deputies say that a shooting left 4 people hurt. Now, this happened at 3 o'clock in the morning Sunday. All right, so late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, deputies say they found 4 victims with gunshot wounds. All of them hospitalized. At last check, 3 were released. Law enforcement says the shooters were driving a white Infiniti. There it is right there. This white Infiniti with a Mississippi license plate, stolen tags. If you have any information, please call the Tunica County Sheriff's Office. You can see that number there, 662-363-1411. Mississippi teachers received the highest pay raise in history last year, but it didn't keep them in the classroom, and now their work is falling on support staff. Rosalind Anderson reports.
Education advocates say the teacher shortage impacts the students and those filling the gap when teachers call it quits. Jackson Association of Educators President George Stewart says the organization is grateful legislators increased teacher pay, but the lack of educators in schools puts more responsibility on assistant teachers.
When those teachers that leave the classroom, they don't have anybody to fill in for them, we have our education support staff come in and fill that teacher role. So you're talking about teachers who are basically on minimum wage salary that are acting as certified teachers in the classroom.
According to JAE, teacher shortages can result in larger class sizes with more than 30 students in a classroom. The director of recruitment for Jackson Public Schools says there are 11 open elementary teacher positions. The district is also seeing a shortage of substitute teachers.
Being able to pay teacher assistants what they're really worth will allow us to be able to recruit high quality employees, fill those vacancies and those needs, and with the hopes of also being able to convert some of those teacher assistants, if they meet the qualifications, to become actual teachers.
JPS assistant teachers with no experience earn $11.27 an hour. They received an additional $1,500 when the legislature approved the teacher pay raise. All teacher assistants in the district are in pre-K through first grade. There are currently 43 teacher assistant vacancies. In Jackson, Rosalind Anderson, 3 on your side.
Nursing programs at Mississippi's public universities are turning away hundreds of potential students each year because there's not enough staff members. The state's commissioner of higher education says nursing programs have struggled to keep faculty members because of the state's lower than average salaries for public university employees. Mississippi institutions of higher learning now requesting a $5 million increase in state funds for the upcoming fiscal year to ramp up nursing facilities at public universities.
On this
Landmark
50th
abortion
anniversary
ruling.
of Roe v. Wade.
Landmark abortion ruling. Roe v. Wade turned 50 years old yesterday, days after the first March for Life in a post-Roe world. Marissa Para gives us a look at some of the marches that happen to recognize the anniversary across the nation, some pro-life, others pro-choice.
On this 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, abortion rights activists drumming up defiance, moving their main women's march bigger than Roe from the Capitol to the Midwest.
This time we moved the National March to Madison in order to kick off our newfound campaign to the states, which is where the battle is taking place.
So why have the main march here in Madison, Wisconsin? That is because we're just weeks away from a primary judicial election, and a state Supreme Court seat is up for grabs. And if it is filled with a pro-abortion rights candidate, then the Wisconsin abortion ban could be overturned.
With sister marches in hundreds of cities across the country, just days after the National March for Life against abortion, and just 7 months after Roe v. Wade was overturned in a 5-4 decision, sending both sides of the debate into action. The state of play, a murky patchwork. Roughly 24 states have either a total abortion ban or are close to it. Some state laws changed immediately, like Wisconsin's abortion ban. Some, like neighboring Illinois, later passing abortion protections. And last fall, historically red states, Kansas and Kentucky, voted down anti-abortion ballot measures. Vice President Kamala Harris once again calling to codify Roe.
Congress must pass a bill that protects freedom and liberty.
But with Republicans in control of the House, the federal abortion debate remains in a deadlock, making mobilizing on a local level more important than ever. From Madison, Wisconsin, Marissa Para, NBC News.
Okay, your degree for higher education getting more expensive, of course. That's why getting all the scholarships you can is so valuable and important. In fact, the average person owes almost $38,000 in student loans. Got a Best Life report now on some ways scholarships can help you and your children get a degree without bankrupting the future. Take a look.
I have a full ride to UCF through Bright Futures.
I had a football scholarship. I got my tuition paid for 2 or 3 times over.
Recent surveys show $49 billion is awarded in scholarships annually, but an estimated $100 million in scholarship money still goes unawarded each year, mostly due to a lack of applicants.
There are tons of scholarships throughout your local community. If you are involved in a church, a mosque, a synagogue, your local fire department, even the post office offers scholarship opportunities for students.
Most cities have a local Rotary that awards $7.5 million in scholarships each year. Contact your college's financial aid website.
The website has tons of information. Some even have scholarship platforms.
Also, start researching online. One website that lists more obscure scholarships and the dates the applications are due is College Life Made Easy. You can find one just about for everyone, like a pet lover scholarship worth $1,000. All you need to do is send in a photo and a caption of your pet. Pellapost Overcoming Adversity Scholarship. That's worth $2,000 and is open to children who have incarcerated parents. And there's up to $25,000 in the Live Moss Scholarship. All you have to do is submit a 2-minute video on what you're passionate about and how you plan to change the world. Most importantly, get into a routine of hunting for scholarships.
You need to incorporate searching and applying for scholarships and make it a routine habit. And the reason being, it is competitive.
When we get a chance, we always love talking to the best food reporter in Memphis and the Mid-South. We've got Jennifer Chandler on the line with us at the digital desk. Jennifer, good morning. We are talking about king cakes, some of the favorites out there. How are you?
I'm doing very good, and I have to just say, king cakes, in my opinion, are perfect for breakfast, lunch, dinner, afternoon snack, late night snack, you name it. You can enjoy them all you want for the next few weeks.
Oh yeah, round the clock, baby. Here we go.
So if you're not familiar with king cakes, it's a Mardi Gras tradition that kicks off during Epiphany, which was January 6th. And from that point on until Fat Tuesday, which is the day before Ash Wednesday, you can enjoy a king cake. And the tradition goes is this cake is it's like a yeasty cake similar to a cinnamon roll dough, and it can be stuffed with lots of good things, but it's always decorated with like vanilla icing and has the cinnamon sugar, not cinnamon sugar, but the colored sugars on top and the Mardi Gras colors of gold and purple and green. And they are so good. But one of the things, if you happen to get the baby when you're taking a piece, tradition has it that you are to host the next party and bring the king cake for the next party. So it's kind of a catch-22. You get to be king for the day, but then you got to bring the next king cake.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, everyone always wants to find the baby, right?
I know. Well, and it used to be that if you wanted a good king cake, you'd have to drive down to New Orleans or you'd have to have one shipped to Memphis. And over the past few years, more and more Memphis bakeries are making king cakes, and they are making really good king cakes. So I have on the commercialappeal.com right now, I have a list of 14 places in the Memphis area where you can find a delicious king cake. But I wanted to talk about a few of them because they're all a little bit different. And actually, I think a good challenge should be spend the next 2 weeks tasting all 14 of them would be a good one. It'd be a good challenge to have.
Ooh, good.
So you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so one of my favorites has to do with the fact that I like a cream cheese stuffed king cake. And Sweet Lala's Bakery in East Memphis has a really good cinnamon roll dough, and they have turned it into this kind of big, and it's kind of, you can see from the picture, the cake is kind of like, it's fat. It's like this big, and it is stuffed with this delicious vanilla cream cheese. And it is really, really good. It's good room temperature, but if you ever happen to catch one when they're pulling them out of the oven when it's warm, or you reheat it, it's nice, and the icing gets all gooey, and it's really, really worth every calorie that you can have. But that's a really pretty one that you can see that they have. It's one of my favorite. La Baguette makes a really good one as well. And theirs is more what you would think of when you get one from Gambino's or someplace like that down in New Orleans. It's a thinner type cake, but again, it has all the goodness and you can order it. La Baguette, I actually think they just have the cinnamon roll flavor, not cinnamon, but the cinnamon flavor. But there are places like the Donut Hut. We didn't have a picture of theirs, but they're out in Collierville and they make a king cake and they can have it stuffed with everything from like cherry and blueberry. I think they're doing a Bavarian cream one this year. And they have multiple sizes so that you, depending on what size group you're getting, you can get a really big giant one, or you can get a medium one, or you can get a small one that feeds maybe like 6 to 10 people. So the Donut Hut has a lot of different flavors and different types of things you can choose from. Moving away from those traditional versions that those two places, if you're just wanting a king cake for two, what some of us sometimes do, the Ginger's Bread Company in Midtown, he makes a traditional size king cake, but he also makes one that serves two, that's really tasty and it's very cute. There's also Memphis Whistle, which is a bar. You would not think to pick up your king cakes, but they make individual size king cakes there. And what's really cool about there, Jeff Hicks, who is the owner, he is all about, he's a mixologist. He's all about making his own infused alcohols and spirits. And he infuses vodka with cinnamon bark to make this kind of almost like fireballish type vodka. And they use that as the cinnamon base when they're making the icing for their king cakes. So that's kind of fun. And you can order those in advance. She'll have them. Amanda is his wife, and they have them. She's the one, the baker, and she has them in the restaurant. Most days, a limited number, but you can order these individual size ones there. Okay, moving from the non-traditional even further, there are a couple places doing some really interesting flavors this year. One is Farm and Fig, which is a prepared foods shop that is in the Cooper Young neighborhood. And owner Dina Grazzani told me that they're going to be making their traditional one this year that comes with cinnamon and cream cheese. But they are doing one called the King Creole, which I can't wait to get a bite of this one. It is stuffed with a banana and peanut butter pastry cream, and it's got the vanilla icing and all the sugar, on top, but it also has candied bacon on top. I mean, does that not sound like sinful and sinfully good?
Yes, very decadent. I love it. Keep it going, Jennifer. Yeah. We love it.
And then also St. Michael's Church does king cakes every year. Their head pastor, priest, Ben Bradshaw, before becoming in the priesthood, he was a chef. And so he does a lot of cool things around food, and it's a fundraiser for them. They are doing king cakes this year, and they have a whole variety of flavors. I actually had their Nutella one last year, and if you like Nutella, that's definitely one you might want to try, but they have a big selection of flavors as well. And one I'm really excited about this year is, in the past, king cakes really, if you're gluten-free, you really haven't had an option, just because of the nature of what a king cake is. But this year, the gluten-free bakery, Jacques Louise, which is an online bakery, you order a special order only, she is making gluten-free king cakes for those who can't have gluten. So there is an option now for those of you that want something different. And one of the things I'm going to say about all these king cakes is order them in advance if you think you want one. I mean, as I said, many of them say that they have some in stock, but they're probably going to help, the week or two before Mardi Gras, they're probably going to only have one or two in-house, and they will probably sell out quickly. And especially if you want one right about Mardi Gras, like around that weekend before Mardi Gras or on Fat Tuesday, they only have a limited amount of capability in their bakeries, so they will cut off orders. And most places I find sell out a couple of weeks in advance for those big days, that Saturday and Sunday and that Tuesday of Mardi Gras weekend. So definitely order in advance if you think you want to order one for a group. But if anything, just go find one over the next few weeks. It's good. I mean, they are so good. I have to admit, I may have already had 2 or 3.
Well, you know, that gluten-free option, that's a good option for a lot of people. My wife's gluten-free, so that's a big one that we can enjoy and take part in. Tell us the dates again, Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, just so we have it down.
You know, I'm sitting here and I'm all of a sudden, I was like, had this senior moment. I want to tell you real quick about the exact date, because, you know, Fat Tuesday changes every year. And so, wait, I'm looking at, February 21st. As soon as I got on here, I was like, wait, I forgot to double check the date. So you have until February 21st to enjoy a king cake. So.
Awesome. And then Primus Bakery, I see this one here.
Oh, it's Prima's Bakery and Boutique.
Yes.
So Prima's is Spanish word for cousins. And there are 2 cousins that own this cute little bakery that is downtown on South Main. It's kind of like a couple of bays down from Ernestine and Hazel's. And they do just amazingly beautiful desserts, and it's a fun gift shop boutique. And so this is their king cake. And as you can see, when you look at these pictures, everybody's king cake is a little bit different. And that's what I love about it. It's fun to go and taste and see how different they are. And one of the things about Prima's is, in addition to the king cakes, they're making king cake donuts. They're making king cake macaroons. They're making I think king cake decorated cookies. So they have a lot of fun things on their menu that are definitely worth checking out. I'm trying to think of who else that I have forgotten to mention. There's so many good ones on the list. Oh, and it's not necessarily a cake, so it didn't make my list, but insiders know that if you love a donut and you love a king cake, the 2 weeks prior to Fat Tuesday, king cake donuts show up in the case at Gibson's Donuts. So that's a good thing to know.
Say no more. You know, that's awesome. I love the cream cheese filling. I mean, the Bavarian cream and some of the other ones. I didn't know there was so much creativity when it came to king cakes. It wasn't. I knew it was not a one size fits all, but certainly there's a lot of creativity. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so people can see this on commercialappeal.com/food, right, Jennifer?
Yes, I have the full list is up there now, and it'll actually be in the print edition Friday. And definitely check it out. And I said, let me know what are your favorites. And if you discover one somewhere else that somehow I missed, please let me know, because I'm originally from New Orleans. I was born there. I mean, I grew up pretty much in Memphis, but there's certain things that have a special place in my heart, and the king cake tradition is one that definitely does. So I want to make sure that I include everyone that I can in that list. So if you find someone that's making a great one, send me a note. Let me know.
Awesome. Jennifer Chandler, the Commercial Appeal food reporter. We always appreciate your segment here on the Digital Desk. Thanks very much.
It's good to see you. Happy Mardi Gras.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you as well. Back here in the Mid-South, thousands are currently struggling with homelessness all across Memphis and Shelby County. One man is shedding light on the harsh realities homeless people face. Action News 5, Sydney Gray reports.
Terrence Lester, a PhD student who's creating a documentary highlighting how laws are impacting the unhoused community, spent 2 days walking the streets of Memphis.
I wanted to come over to Tennessee, live on the streets, be amongst those who are unhoused, to kind of hear from their perspective, because sometimes, when things like this happen, you only hear from the talking heads. You never hear from people who are actually going through the suffering.
According to the 2022 Memphis Shelby County Point in Time Summary, more than 1,000 people are homeless and 229 do not have access to a shelter.
During my studies, the state of Tennessee decided to pass this law making camping outside illegal, which is a Class E felony.
Lester's referring to House Bill 978, which criminalizes camping by homeless people in parks and other local public property. Governor Bill Lee refused to sign the law, but it still took effect in July 2022. Lester says he thinks lawmakers should walk in the shoes of those experiencing homelessness.
Not having access to restrooms, having to find places to shower, unique spaces, asking for cups of water, like just water, because you can get dehydrated on the streets.
He also says there needs to be more attention on creating safe spaces and belonging for the unhoused.
We're all interconnected, and we should be interrelated and interdependent. When I see you, I see a part of myself in you. And, just because a person doesn't have an address does not mean that they're not your neighbor.
Sydney Gray, Action News 5.
Take a look at this. A Kroger attack in Memphis caught on camera. Surveillance footage here seconds before the crime. A suspect, according to police, tried to rob a victim while security was with her outside the Kroger at Poplar and Kirby. This happened about 8 o'clock Thursday night. The suspect demanded the victim's purse. She tried to get away, but she fell. That's when she told police the suspect kicked her in the head multiple times and then ran off. Police report also shows that the suspect shoved a security guard. So Kroger put out a statement. At Kroger, safety is our top priority for customers and associates. The purpose of our third-party uniformed security officers is to serve as a deterrent to criminal activity and help make the store a safe environment for customers and associates. If you have any information on that suspect in that video, please contact Crime Stoppers 901-528-CASH. Want to also let you know tomorrow about a blood drive. Participants have a chance to win 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. This is the St. Francis Hospital Blood Drive in Memphis. It is Wednesday, and that's from 9 to 2. You can go for more information there. St. Francis Hospital. You could also go to redcross.gov. All right, so let's talk now about the Election Day, the special primary. It'll be tomorrow, District 86. This is a state representatives election. It includes areas of Millington, Fraser, downtown Memphis, some parts of South Memphis and Westwood. Voters will have a choice of voting on paper or using a machine. 10 candidates are on the ballot. The winner will fill the seat of the late Barbara Cooper, who served for 26 years. Okay, so we talked about the blood drive, and so now we're moving on to the Lisa Marie Presley Memorial. The only child of Elvis Presley was laid to rest at Graceland yesterday. Her celebration of life brought thousands out to the front lawn while millions viewed online this service, a service that included Alanis Morissette, Axl Rose, and so many others. Walter Murphy has more.
Thousands of fans, friends, and family of the late Lisa Marie Presley gathered on Sunday to send the singer, songwriter, and daughter of the king off with style.
'Cause nothing lasts forever, even cold November rain.
A beautiful and good soul, and a cherished and deeply missed family member. Lisa is loved and missed by many, and will continue to be loved and missed by all those whose lives she touched.
Sing How Great Thou Art for the very first time on the stage, and it was the most amazing experience, and it changed my whole life. And had an opportunity a couple times to have some spiritual encounters with his daughter, and just wanted to be here to pay my respects for that.
I mean, I just still can't believe she's gone, but I'm grateful that they brought her back home to Graceland.
A home built by her father, visited by millions every year, now where Lisa Marie Presley will rest peacefully forever beside Elvis and her beloved son, Benjamin.
Okay, so that was Walter Murphy reporting. Ownership of Graceland will now go to Lisa Marie's daughters, Riley, Harper, and Finley. Finley is asking that donations be made to the Elvis Presley Charitable Foundation, which focuses on arts, education, children's programs in the Whitehaven area. And a Cardiac part of Memphis in May is back this year in a new location. We've talked to you about the Blues tent going up at Handy Park this year. Memphis Tourism Blues Stage on Beale will be free and open to the public. Memphis in May believes that this will bring it to a wider audience. The full lineup of Memphis in May music festivals coming up next month. It's set for May 5th through the 7th. Comedy legends tonight at FedEx Forum. Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, they're performing tonight. Memphis was added, only 5 dates added to their U.S. tour. You could still get some tickets there. They still are available. You can go to our website for a link, actionnews5.com. All right, go Tigers, go. They have 3 straight wins. They beat Cincinnati yesterday. It was great to see. Tigers now move to 5-2 in AAC play. They'll be back at home this Thursday night when they take on SMU. And those Grizzlies, they have lost 2 in a row since winning 11. They lost on Friday against the Lakers, and they lost a nail-biter at the end there in Phoenix. They were down some 29 points at one point in this game. They only lost by 2, 112-110. Up next for the Grizzlies, they take on the Sacramento Kings tonight at 9:30 in Sacramento. Friends, family, and University of Georgia teammates got together in Athens to celebrate the life of Devin Willock. He was killed last Sunday in a car crash with football staffer Chandler LaCroix just hours after celebrating the team's back-to-back national championships. Private celebration followed his funeral that happened last Wednesday. His death leaves loved ones and fans in mourning.
It really puts it in perspective how valuable human life is and how fragile it is, that every day we get is a gift from God.
His public service will be in New Jersey on Friday.
It was a pretty cool moment.
Buffalo Bills' Damar Hamlin attended his first Bills game since he suffered a cardiac arrest during a game earlier this month. They lost pretty convincingly to the Cincinnati Bengals, but seeing Damar Hamlin at the stadium in a suite, attending the game and watching it made everyone really happy.
It was a pretty cool moment. The game wasn't trending the way we wanted it to, but when they put him on the big screen, and just a great moment, keeping perspective, of course, on where he was just a few weeks ago. So super happy for him and thankful that his health is returning, and I know he'll continue to take it one day at a time.
Well, today marks the official start of the 2023 tax filing season. The IRS now accepting and processing 2022 tax returns. The agency says they're expecting more than 168 million people to file taxes. This year's deadline is April 18th.
Good morning and happy Monday. We have some clouds in place this morning. Those will be clearing over the next few hours as a high pressure system moves in. That results in sinking air, which gives us a clear sky. That high pressure system, though, moves east as a low pressure system that will disrupt our weather, bring some rain in on Tuesday. Eventually that low and that front push off to the east. So by Wednesday, we're done with the heavy rain, but on the back side of that low pressure system on Wednesday, we'll still have clouds and maybe even a little bit of drizzle. 20% chance on Wednesday, but an 80% chance of that rain on Tuesday. So let's check out timing. So today, as I mentioned, it's dry. We'll get more and more sunshine as we get a little later in the day. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures around 50, and then overnight tonight into early tomorrow. A few clouds, but still no rain at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So if you have plans to head out the door 7, 8 o'clock, you won't have any rain to contend with. But by the afternoon, this is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, rain pushes in from the southwest again with that low pressure system. You'll have on and off rain continuing pretty much the rest of the day on Tuesday. One of those soggy days where you want to have an umbrella or a rain jacket on hand all day. Where you see this pink color here, that's actually some sleet mixed in Harrisburg, Dyersburg, Tipton, Lauderdale County, and spots like Blytheville also seeing some of that sleet. Temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 50s. Yes, you can still get sleet falling with temperatures that far above freezing, but it won't stick, obviously. It'll hit the ground and melt immediately. We could still see some of that in those northern counties through late that night, but most of us will just see rain, and you'll still have some lingering showers probably through at least 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. By the time you get out the door on Wednesday morning, 7, 8 a.m., as I mentioned, you'll just have some drizzle left over. Here are those rainfall totals. About a ½ inch in Wynne, an inch in Memphis, close to 1.5 inches in Marks and Oxford, Holly Springs, Corinth. Good soaking for us, but no severe weather to deal with. You may have some gusty winds and some rumbles of thunder, but that would be the extent of that on Tuesday. Here's today's forecast. Sunshine, 44 degrees at noon, 50 at 3, mid 40s at 5, and lower 40s by 7 tonight. But your high today is 50 degrees, average is 51. So we're right where we should be for a high temperature. Same with that low tonight around 32 in Memphis. Outside of Memphis, though, in the 20s for most spots, 29 in Covington and Ripley, 27 degrees in Alamo, right around 30 in Holly Springs, 32 in Tunica and Clarksdale, 31 in Olive Branch tonight, lower 30s in Marion, and upper 20s if you're in Blytheville this evening. And then this weekend, temperatures in the 50s, so we actually get a little increase in temperatures for the weekend. It looks mostly dry on Saturday. Could squeeze out a stray shower on Saturday evening, but Sunday's really the main day with rain. Right now we have it at a 40%. So this many days out, it's looking pretty likely that we'll have some showers on Sunday. This today and tomorrow we're around 50 degrees, and then temperatures really drop off behind that front. So Wednesday, your high is only 44, and with some winds still at about 30 miles per hour out of the north, probably feel more like 34 degrees on Wednesday afternoon, 45 on Thursday, and then 50s Friday through the weekend.
Now let's talk about an important issue that affects all Americans, right? Because we know that there's two guarantees in life, death and taxes. And certainly these tax returns this year is going to be a doozy. There's going to be a lot of changes. So we got to go to our expert here, Mark Stever, Tax Information Officer with Jackson Hewitt, always in the know when it comes to this stuff. I saw Mark kind of laughing there as I was introing him. How are you, Mark? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Very exciting time for all Americans. It's tax refund time.
Tax refund time. Certainly some changes this coming year for these tax returns for 2022. Tell us some of the big changes people need to watch for.
Yeah, it may seem like it was not a year big change because there was not a lot of media on tax law changes and that year-end bill fizzled, but there are a lot of tax law changes. We call it the year of the great tax reset. A lot of the benefits that were put into place for the pandemic, increased child credit, dependent care credit, earned income credit, being able to deduct charitable donations if you don't itemize, all of those expired last year at the end of 2021. So they're not in place for 2022, and that could cause lower refunds for some taxpayers and may have some tax refund shock or tax refund risk of shock if you're not careful. So it's probably a good idea to pay extra close attention to your taxes this year and get after it a little bit earlier than you might have in the past.
Okay, so let's walk through it just kind of step by step here. Let's talk about first the changes you mentioned, the child tax credit in 2022.
Well, for 2021, it was about $2,000, up to about $1,400 was refundable. Jump ahead to 2022, or 2021, pardon me, the government changed the bill to allow $3,600 per young child and all of it refundable. Well, at the end of 2021, that expired, so it's not in place for 2022. It's back to that original amount, $2,000. And that's just one example. So if you had child tax credit last year or dependent care credits last year or earned income credit and you were single last year, you got a much bigger refund last year. Those won't be in place for this tax return, and it could result in a lower refund. Now, there's still great benefits, and they're still there. They'll just be a lot different. So I would tell your viewers this. Don't use last year's tax return as your absolute guide for what to expect this year. Life changes and pandemic changes notwithstanding, the tax changes reverted back to prior pandemic amounts.
Okay, what about the child and dependent care credit change? Tell us about that.
Similar to the earned income credit, it was double, tripled, and made fully refundable in 2021. And then that expired in 2022 and was not updated. So it's back to the pre-pandemic amount. Now, if you do have children that were in daycare so you could work, or you and your spouse could work, or summer camp even, you still have a nice big credit. It's just not as big as the 2021 size credit was.
Sorry about that, Mark. Those who are self-employed, what kind of changes are they looking at?
Well, there's still some great benefits if you're self-employed, full or part-time, have a side gig. The big one we've seen, and it continues to be big, the home office deduction. It's available if you're self-employed, full, or even part-time, or even if your spouse is. Not available if you're an employee. And there's a host of other deductions from travel, cell phone, computer, marketing, pocket expenses, out-of-pocket expenses, lunches, materials. All of those can go in to reduce your taxable income from your side gig and make your return on your activity a little bit better. So if you have side gig income, and a lot of people have since the pandemic, make sure either you understand what all the rules and deductions and options are, or your tax pro does, and keep really good records, because every deduction reduces your taxes and can increase your tax refund.
A lot of people are going to be wondering if they can still write off their charitable donations this year. What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's one of those ones that you could during 2021 at the height of the pandemic law changes. It expired in 2022. You still get a nice, healthy charitable donation for cash to your church, your mosque, or your synagogue, and even the fair market value of stuff that you donate. Unfortunately, it's only available if you itemize. In America, you need to get the standard deduction, or if larger, the itemized deductions, mortgage interest, property taxes, and charitable donation, among the many. And you have to be an itemizer to take charitable donations. People still do, but not as big as the option was in 2021 when you didn't even have to itemize to take that. But again, that one expired last year, not here this year. So when you go doing your taxes, don't look at last year's return as your roadmap for what to do. A good tax pro will know, but other people might make a mistake.
What about the earned income tax credit? Any changes in this year?
Well, it's one of the most overlooked tax credits. 1 in 5 people fail to take advantage of it. First, the good news, it's still in place. It's still a $6,000 plus maximum credit if you have 3 or more dependents. Unfortunately, for last year, like some of those other rules, if you were single, they tripled the amount of the earned income credit up to about $1,500. That, like those others, expired at the end of 2021. But it's still a nice credit. It's still a credit for moderate and middle income taxpayers that have earnings, and it's one that's often overlooked. So if you're not sure if you get the earned income credit, like a lot of the others, education credit, dependent care credit, and more, make sure you talk to a qualified, trained, and experienced tax professional to make sure you get all those credits. Because if there's one thing besides death and taxes like you open, if you leave it off your tax return, it stays off your tax return. The IRS is not in the business of making sure you get all your benefits. Only you and a tax pro, if you use one, can do that.
Okay, and finally, will there be more stimulus checks or recovery rebate credit this time?
Certainly does not seem to be in the play right now. They floated that idea last year a little bit. It never really caught traction. So I don't think you'll see one of those big stimulus payment checks like the $1,400 and the others. Now, some states are doing it, and they're creating a little bit of confusion on how you get it. Is it automatic? But in large part, there will be no stimulus on the 22 tax return. But a lot of other things still are. I go back to the credits we talked about, deductions we talked about, other benefits that if you look to your tax return, and more importantly, life changes that you had during the year, got married, got divorced, had a new dependent, taking care of a dependent parent, all of those can add to your tax return, tax refund, and they're not as big as tax law changes in the way of publicity. So if you had something big happen in your life, gone back to work full-time, self-employed, sidebar, side gig, make sure you tell your tax pro you may be sitting on some other boosters for your tax refund this year.
Mark, this has been so good. You've given us so much information out there. Where can people find that information online?
Well, any good tax company has a good website, jacksonhewitt.com. We have videos, tax tips, checklists to get started. You can put your zip code in and find an office near you. Make an appointment if you don't just want to walk in. A lot of things on our website at jacksonhewitt.com. But it's important to know next Monday is when IRS really starts processing tax refunds. So there's no reason to wait. Your documents are coming in. Get that shoebox or envelope ready. File early, get your money early. You don't have to be Warren Buffett to know that makes sense. And you can start as early as today, but it'll start filing with the IRS on Monday.
And the deadline this year is April 18th, right?
That's correct. The 15th is on a weekend, and anytime it's on the weekend, it falls to the following Monday, which would ordinarily be April 17th, except that this year, that's Emancipation Day, a national holiday in Washington, D.C., so it moves to the next day. So you have a couple of extra days, April 18th, to file your taxes. But again, there is no good reason to wait. 3 out of 4 people get a refund every year. We expect that this year. File early, get your money. File early, lock up your data with the IRS in case one of those schemers has stolen your name and your social or your spouse. So file early, get your money. File early, lock up your data. And most importantly, file early in case you have new questions that come up from all the stuff we talked about. You don't want to be up against that midnight hour on the 18th looking for records for your side gig income. You want to do it early for all the right reasons, mostly because if you do money, you get the money. And even more importantly, if you owe taxes, and here's a big secret for your viewers, if you file early and you still don't have to write that check or debit card or checking account until April 18th at midnight. So filing early is separate from paying early. You can pay later.
Okay, Tax Information Officer, the Chief Tax Information Officer for Jackson Hewitt, Mark Stieber. Mark, I always love chopping it up with you when it comes to taxes, what to watch for, what to not include or include this year. You spell it out so perfectly. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good luck to you all. It's the time to file.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, did you know that 90% of Americans, 90% say money affects their stress level and they're anxious about their financial situation? And another huge majority, 88% of Americans believe they have room for improvement when it comes to their financial wellness. So with that in mind, and January being Financial Wellness Month, let's bring in Tammy Trenta. She's the founder and CEO of Family Financial to talk about ways that we can improve our financial health. Good morning, Tammy. I know that when people think of New Year's resolutions, at the top of the list, in addition to diet and exercise, is finances. So where do we start?
That's a great question. I like to equate financial wellness in the beginning of the year, much like an annual wellness visit at the doctor. And the first thing that you want to do is get organized, gather all of your statements, homeowners, property tax, investments, bank accounts, Social Security. You want to get your estate planning in order, and just look at those things because laws change, the economy has changed, premiums have changed, we've had inflation. So kind of gathering the information is a really important first step. So we do our annual wellness checkups once a year in the beginning of the year because most investors want to know how they did. And so then that leads us to the next step, which would be knowing your rate of return. Now, this might not be a great year to look at how you did, but you can't really put your head in the sand. It wasn't a great year in the stock market, and you need to make sure that you're still on track for meeting your goals. So you want to look at how your performance was. What was your rate of return this year? Surprising how many people don't know that. Whether there were any losses harvested in your account for your income taxes or any rebalancing that had been done throughout the year. If you don't have an investment account yet or an advisor, the beginning of the year is a great time to get started.
Yeah, no question, Tammy. In fact, a financial planner is recommended. I have one, and the way I tell people is like, hey, that's their whole job is to know rates of return, know what the market's going to do, look at predictors, things that I don't have time to spend on. They focus on it, and so when I talk about having a financial planner, it's huge. I would think that when you start getting organized, one of the ways that you begin is with a budget, right?
Absolutely, especially in a year where we've had, unprecedented inflation since the 70s. So a lot of those things or subscriptions that you've had might have snuck up throughout the year. And so it's a great time to review your budget, review your savings goal. You might even find some new money for a new goal that you might have this year by just taking a look at what you need and what you don't need.
Exactly. And budget, saving goals. What about knowing the numbers? That's on the list too. Tell me about that.
Well, one thing that you need to do is know what you need in order to become financially independent. And that means knowing your numbers. So updating a financial plan is a great way to start off the year, especially in a year where, like I said, we've had a down market. The down markets happen maybe once every 4 or 5 years. So you want to make sure you're still on track. If you're not on track, then right now is the best time to change what you're doing, because wealth accumulation tends to accelerate or decelerate pretty quickly the longer that time goes on. So, I think there's a statistic every 5 years that you delay your savings, you actually have to double the savings to meet the same savings target.
One of the things that I'm concerned about, just looking at things, is I'm concerned about inflation, and inflation being at such a high rate. It was, the highest in 40 years last year. There's nothing that suggests that it's going down considerably anytime soon. How do you combat against that as a financial planner? What do you tell your clients?
Well, when we go through the financial plans, we account for inflation. So that's something that you want to make sure when you do your projections that you have an increased spending level every year. So if you're spending $80,000 a year, you need to be able to spend more to just have the same expenses. So that's how we handle inflation. But I also think that planning is not really a set it and forget it kind of thing. Not only are there changes in the economy like inflation, the stock market performance, the real estate market, interest rates, but you also have things in your personal life that change. Maybe you're getting married, maybe you're having a child. And one thing we know is that everybody's life changes all the time. And so it's really important to have a list of things that you do to follow up and things that you'd like to accomplish throughout the year.
Tammy, this has been a great list. Is there anything else we haven't touched on you feel is important? Because, this is January is one of those months where everyone's trying to get their financial goals in shape and set for the rest of the year.
Yes, the last thing that I'll say is you need to look at it every year. So it's not a one-time financial plan that sits on your coffee table collecting dust. There are a lot of financial advisors out there. You want to work with a certified financial planner and someone who practices as a certified financial planner. So looking at the plan every year is really, really important, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Okay, Tammy Trent, founder and CEO of Family Financial. We appreciate all those financial tips. They are so helpful to so many people out there. Thanks very much. Okay, family members of Tyre Nichols expected to view the video of a traffic stop he was involved in earlier this month. It comes after 5 Memphis police officers were fired for their roles that they played during that traffic stop. It is a big story, certainly, that we are following. We certainly followed it this morning. Tyre Nichols' family, their attorney Ben Crump, will get the first public viewing of that traffic stop video back on January 7th. It comes more than 2 weeks after the incident that happened on Rains Road and Ross Road. Memphis police officers in this report say that as officers approached Nichols' car, there was some sort of confrontation. Nichols ran, and then there was another confrontation before he was detained. They say Nichols complained about shortness of breath, and they had an ambulance taken to a nearby hospital where he died 3 days later. Again, those 5 Memphis police officers were fired Friday following the investigation. In a statement, Memphis Police Chief C.J. Davis said the officers violated multiple department policies during excessive use of force, duty to intervene, and duty to render aid. Now, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, Department of Justice are all launching their own investigations in this case, and the findings of those investigations have not been released. Of course, we'll be continuing to follow this on ActionNews5.com. According to the Associated Press, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's administration plans to cut a program with ties to Planned Parenthood designed to prevent and treat HIV. A letter from Planned Parenthood says the Tennessee Department of Health told the organization will no longer receive HIV prevention grants, and the state was ending its partnership with Planned Parenthood to provide HIV testing. Mississippi state senators proposing an $80 million grant for financially struggling hospitals and other programs to attract and retain nurses and doctors. One proposal would forgive up to $18,000 in student loans for any person who becomes a nurse and works in Mississippi. Another would provide $20 million in grants to community colleges for nurses and allied health programs and create a $5 million residency program there. All right, let's take a live look from our High 5 camera in Midtown Memphis. There is a lot of sunshine outside after yesterday's rainy, wet, and cold day. In fact, take a look at that. The sky is just clear as we take a look from our High 5 camera in Midtown Memphis towards downtown. It's looking nice today, pretty seasonal when you think of mid-January, but changes are on the way. Brittany Bryant has details.
Good morning and happy Monday. We have some clouds in place this morning. Those will be clearing over the next few hours as a high pressure system moves in. That results in sinking air, which gives us a clear sky. That high pressure system though moves east as a low pressure system that will disrupt our weather, bring some rain in on Tuesday. Eventually that low and that front push off to the east. So by Wednesday, we're done with the heavy rain, but on the back side of that low pressure system on Wednesday, we'll still have clouds and maybe even a little bit of drizzle. 20% chance on Wednesday, but an 80% chance of that rain on Tuesday. So let's check out timing. So today, as I mentioned, it's dry. We'll get more and more sunshine as we get a little later in the day. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures around 50, and then overnight tonight into early tomorrow. A few clouds, but still no rain at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So if you have plans to head out the door 7, 8 o'clock, you won't have any rain to contend with. But by the afternoon, this is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, rain pushes in from the southwest again with that low pressure system. You'll have on and off rain continuing pretty much the rest of the day on Tuesday. One of those soggy days where you want to have an umbrella or a rain jacket on hand all day. Where you see this pink color here, that's actually some sleet mixed in Harrisburg, Dyersburg, Tipton, Lauderdale County, and spots like Blytheville also seeing some of that sleet. Temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 50s. Yes, you can still get sleet falling with temperatures that far above freezing, but it won't stick, obviously. It'll hit the ground and melt immediately. We could still see some of that in those northern counties through late that night, but most of us will just see rain, and you'll still have some lingering showers, probably through at least 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. By the time you get out the door on Wednesday morning, 7, 8 a.m., as I mentioned, you'll just have some drizzle left over. Here are those rainfall totals. About a ½ inch in Wynne, an inch in Memphis, close to 1.5 inches in Marks and Oxford, Holly Springs, Corinth. Good soaking for us, but no severe weather to deal with. You may have some gusty winds and some rumbles of thunder, but that would be the extent of that on Tuesday. Here's today's forecast. Sunshine, 44 degrees at noon, 50 at 3, mid 40s at 5, and lower 40s by 7 tonight. But your high today is 50 degrees, average is 51. So we're right where we should be for a high temperature. Same with that low tonight around 32 in Memphis. Outside of Memphis, though, in the 20s for most spots, 29 in Covington and Ripley, 27 degrees in Alamo, right around 30 in Holly Springs, 32 in Tunica and Clarksdale, 31 in Olive Branch tonight, lower 30s in Marion, and upper 20s if you're in Blytheville this evening. And then this weekend, temperatures in the 50s, so we actually get a little increase in temperatures for the weekend. It looks mostly dry on Saturday. Could squeeze out a stray shower on Saturday evening, but Sunday's really the main day with rain. Right now we have it at a 40%, so this many days out, it's looking pretty likely that we'll have some showers on Sunday. Today and tomorrow we're around 50 degrees, and then temperatures really drop off behind that front. So Wednesday, your high is only 44, and with some winds still at about 30 miles per hour out of the north, probably feel more like 34 degrees on Wednesday afternoon, 45 on Thursday, and then 50s Friday through the weekend.
The ups and downs in the housing market nationwide still making a difficult time for first-time homebuyers. In this Watching Your Wallet report, we have consumer investigator Rachel DePompa looking at a new housing report at what it means for anyone hoping to buy their first home.
A new report from NerdWallet found homes are still listed about 5.7 times the income of first-time home buyers.
This is notable because the historic advice is to look at homes that are 3 times your income. What this says is that looking at houses in this market is virtually impossible for a lot of first-time buyers.
Elizabeth Renter with NerdWallet says inflation is also eating at budgets, so buyers have a lot more to calculate right now. She doesn't think interest rates are going to come down anytime soon, which means a lot of first-time home buyers may wait to buy.
So there are 2 things you can be working on while you wait it out. The first is saving up for a bigger down payment. Not only does that mean you'll be able to take out a smaller loan when you purchase a home, but you'll be moving in with equity in the house. The second thing is working on your credit.
She says the advertised rates are generally given to the people with the best credit, so you want to make sure you are in a good spot to qualify for the good rate. And know the specifics of your housing market. Talk to local realtors and mortgage specialists. She says if you do see prices come down, don't get overeager. You need to keep those mortgage rates in mind. Use an online mortgage calculator and plug in different interest rates and see how that affects the monthly payment. With this Watching Your Wallet, I'm Rachel DePompa.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital holding a ribbon-cutting ceremony for their new Family Commons area. The new 45,000 square foot area will give patients' families a private space for services like music therapy and school programming in between clinic appointments. The ceremony will begin later today at noon, about 3 hours from now. Also, the Memphis Area Prevention Coalition, along with the local's Memphis Community Outreach Coordinator, Keidra Franklin, hosting a Narcan training session. It'll be at the check-in today. This class will teach people how to recognize the signs of an opioid overdose and administer the opioid overdose reversal drug, Narcan. In fact, Narcan sprays will be available on site. This class will start later tonight at 5 o'clock. Is there such thing as healthy stress? Well, some researchers believe there is. In fact, this morning's Best Life has some ways you can benefit from what's called healthy stress. Watch this. Project deadlines, family drama, and packed schedules can add a lot of stress to someone's day.
Your cortisol goes up, which means your fuel consumption goes up. So what happens, you actually fired up your body. And if you keep it that way, it's like driving your car down the freeway in second gear.
But research shows not all stress is actually bad for you. A study from Stanford University discovered that manageable daily stress may help protect against oxidative damage, which is linked to disease and aging. Some other upsides of stress include increasing motivation to finish projects on time, promoting bonding and social connections with others, boosting immunity and building resilience, and encouraging growth, especially in those children who learn techniques to cope with stress, like meditation or checking in with yourself. Okay, researchers say it's not that stressful situations that affect our health so much, but rather how we react to those stressful situations long after they occurred. For example, within 90 seconds of having something stressful happen to you, like someone cuts you off in traffic, these stress chemicals eventually dissipate away from your blood. And if you're still angry after 90 seconds, well, that's on you. And what researchers are saying is that there could be healthy stress, but that negative stress out there, you have to let that stress go by the wayside and you have to move on. Watch your reaction to it. Okay, so let's go to South Mississippi now. A dance organization hosted a celebratory event in honor of the Lunar New Year, pushing on the news despite the shooting there in California. Members of the White Tiger Dance Academy performed a traditional lion dance in Biloxi. Many continue to celebrate the holiday.
It's honestly heartbreaking, and it makes you realize that it can happen to anyone. Like, it doesn't matter what race you are. And just hearing about it, I have no words, because it happens so often in our country, and it's just a terrible thing.
Okay, so this White Tiger Dance Academy down in Biloxi will host its next Lunar New Year performance on Friday. Five-star story now. Have you ever heard of Hollywood Furniture and Hardware? Well, it has been in business now in Memphis for almost 100 years. Kim Clark has more on them as they prepare to close this family legacy.
This corner of Chelsea and Hollywood has been home to one family's entrepreneurial dream and business for 3 generations and at least 99 years.
1924 is when we actually started, and Hollywood was obviously at that time more of a rural community, wasn't really part of Memphis.
Bart Gary's grandparents, Roy and Irene Sanford, started the business.
And they started basically as a hardware store.
But due to the remoteness of the area back then, this community needed more than just a hardware store.
They needed to be able to sell appliances, stoves, refrigerators, and then, mattresses, and so it just kind of grew for the need.
Then the second generation of the family came along, and years later, the Sanford's daughter Marilyn and her husband Burl Gary joined the business.
Yeah, it was really busy. Of course, back in the day, there were so many factories out here, and there was so much going on.
With both parents working the store, Leslie Gary and her siblings practically grew up there.
I grew up following both my grandfathers around, at the farm, and loved to know how to fix stuff and loved to be helping in the middle of all that. And so I love the hardware part.
Had a tricycle out here, riding up and down the aisles. My kids are all grown now, obviously, and did the same thing.
And just like the growing family, the business grew as well.
You know, the old Hollywood Theater was next door. When it was torn down, we purchased that property. There used to be a drugstore on the corner. We purchased that property. There used to be a cleaners around the corner. We purchased that property. So we've been able to expand right here.
Bart began working at the store about 40 years ago, bringing with him an idea that would give the business its unique identity.
And I saw that there was a need for this French and Victorian style furniture. Even though we still carried everything else, we really got to where we were heavy into that, and we became a destination point for that, and still are to this day.
Leslie started in 1986, thinking she'd stay only a year until she got her business degree.
You know, God always paves the way, and God puts you where you need to be, and through the years, it's been such a blessing. You know, so many wonderful people, and yeah, it's just really been wonderful.
Wonderful people like Jacqueline Loverson, a customer at Hollywood Furniture for roughly 30 years, starting when she bought her first living room set and beds for her children.
I mean, they just like family. I mean, they will help you, you know.
And Jonathan Washington, who said he's been coming to the store a couple of times a week for about 10 years now.
They're pretty good people. I hate they closed on me.
Deciding whether or not to close has been an agonizing decision for the Garys.
It's just time. I mean, I'm healthy. My sister is healthy, Leslie, and you know, I'm at the age now where I want to enjoy my grandkids and not be working all the time. And the great thing about it is we're doing it on our time.
It's just, I hope so many people come by and see us. I've been making a list for a long time of all the people I need to call that have shopped here and just may not have been here lately. And I would hate for somebody to drive up in March or April and go, oh, the Garys are gone and they didn't tell us.
Hollywood Furniture and Hardware, family run and community minded, making us proud that it's called this place home for nearly a century. Kim Clark, Action News 5.
Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. I want to show you this. This is the latest cover of the Memphis Magazine January edition there. Look at that pretty color. And vibrant there. The wedding album, Memphis Marriages in Photos. Good stuff there. Let's talk more about what's inside this edition with Chris McCoy, a writer with Memphis Magazine and the Memphis Flyer. Chris, Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year. I'm doing fine. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you very much. Read the article that you wrote here, this one, about your little trip to the Gulf. You got the best job here doing all these trips all over the place. And wow, the Gulf Coast didn't disappoint, huh?
No, I can't complain. But so a few years ago, back in 2020, before the pandemic, my wife often goes with me on these trips as a photographer, and she has been doing it for years. I've been doing travel writing since 2006, 2000-ish or so. And so a lot of times she'll go and take pictures. And in early 2020, we were supposed to go to the Gulf Coast for a travel story, and her other job, she couldn't go. She couldn't go to that one because her other job, which is a video and film editor, she had a gig pop up, so she couldn't go. So then the pandemic happens, and we're stuck in the house for 2 years, and we don't get to travel. And the whole time we were like, man, I wish you could have gone on that trip, because right before the pandemic, I wish you could have gone. So the opportunity arose again, and this time the stars aligned, and she was able to go on this trip. And we stayed at the Henderson. We stayed at the Henderson Park Inn in Destin, and it's right next to the Henderson State Park. And Travel and Leisure voted it the most romantic hotel in America, I think back in 2017 or 2018. And so I was like, well, since we're going to do the weddings for our cover story, which made a beautiful cover, let's talk a little bit about how to make a romantic trip between a couple. This seemed like a good use of our time. So that's what we did. We tried to go and check out a lot of stuff at the beach in Destin and on the Gulf Coast. We tried to figure out if it was romantic or not, if it was a good thing to do with your partner. And in order to do this, we had to figure out what that meant when we said romantic, right? So that's why I called the story A Theory of Romance. We had to figure out what romantic was before we figured out if something was romantic or not. We had to get our definition down. So some of the story is about us trying to figure out, what does romantic mean, really? And the way the story came together is me proposing things and my wife's name is Laura Jean Hawking, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. For Laura Jean for us to do together. And then she would be like, is that romantic or not? And then she would decide, what it was. But I'll tell you, staying at the Henderson, at the Park Inn, there's the Henderson Park Inn, which is a small B&B on the beach. And then there is the Henderson Resort, which is a 110-room, high rise that's on the same property, but it's set back from the beach. And it also has like a 10,000 square foot spa and stuff, 2 pools, 3 restaurants. It's the full resort experience. So you get to use some of that if you stay in the Henderson. So, we did a couple spa thing there, which we've decided was extremely romantic. When we arrived at the Henderson, they had love spelled out in rose petals on the bed, which we also decided was extremely romantic, and for obvious reasons. But it turned into a really great trip. And the definition of romance that we ended up with, the theory of romance that we ended up with, was it needs to be an activity that allows you to be present with your partner. It allows you to shut out the world and just be there with the person that you love and concentrate on. That's why, for example, miniature golf turned out to be really romantic because we were able to just concentrate on each other and have a good time. So anyways, I think the story ended up being really fun. And, I'm really happy that we did it. And I hope that it helps some folks, go and have a romantic trip and improve their relationships.
I love your explanation about it, Chris. That was spot on, and we don't want to give too much of it away because we want people to pick up the magazine and look through it. And in addition to your writing, Chris, some great pictures that I guess your wife took, Laura took along the way that really kind of makes everything come to life in that article. So nice, and I really enjoyed it. What about the local wedding photographs here? Because we see the cover right here, which is a beautiful cover. Lots of colors, and then the article about various local weddings. Tell me more about this.
Well, we went around to all the wedding photographers that we could find and we could think of who might have some good stuff, and we started from there. We were like, show us some of your best pics, your best images that you think would be good for the magazine, that would be publishable. And then, we worked outwards from there. And it turns out there's a lot of good photographers in this city, which is something that really working for Memphis Magazine has shown me. But, a lot of them, that's what they do, to make ends meet. They go and photograph weddings. So you can have some really great talent, shooting you on the most important day of your life, and it helps out a lot of photographers who are artists in their other lives. But they do fantastic work, and I think they just did a great job sourcing all these photographs and finding the right ones. But I do believe the one thing that story shows is that if you're going to get married in Memphis and you need a photographer, you're in good hands because we got some good folks here.
Absolutely, totally agree here, and again, this is all on the cover of the first issue of the year for Memphis Magazine. There, you can see the wedding album, Memphis Marriages in photos there. Again, the January edition of Memphis Magazine. Before we let you go, Chris, anything else you want to mention?
Hey, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year. We got some good stuff for the magazine coming up in the new year. I mentioned photography, and our February issue focuses on photographers. So once you've devoured the January issue, that's what you have to look forward to.
Well, I look forward to it. I can't wait to get it in the mail, my January edition. Look forward to each and every time it comes in the mail. Chris McCoy, we appreciate you spending time with us each and every time you do. Thanks for all the hard work. Much success to you in 2023. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Same to you.
Okay, Andrew Douglas here in the Action News 5 digital desk. Good morning to you. Let's talk about cardiovascular health, because that really has such a pervasive, real sway on people's healthy dispositions, whether they're healthy or not. About 80% of people in the U.S. have below optimal cardiovascular health. Only 19% of U.S. adults have high heart health. And overall, cardiovascular health in America is suboptimal, but there's some new opportunities that are coming to light that can improve and maintain optimal heart health across the lifespan of people all over. Let's bring in now cardiologist Nouman Moshtagh joining us here on the Action News 5 digital desk. Dr. Moshtagh, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Tell us your basic view of the status of cardiovascular health in the United States.
Well, despite tremendous advances in cardiovascular care over the last 50 years, the truth is that, unfortunately, cardiovascular disease remains the #1 killer of adults in the United States. About 700,000 people die of heart disease every year. And as you mentioned, research published by researchers at Northwestern Medicine has shown that 4 out of 5, 80% of U.S. adults have suboptimal health care. And that number is only, unfortunately, projected to increase over the next 30 years and is likely to disproportionately affect already disadvantaged populations. So sobering numbers.
Yeah, they are sobering numbers, Doctor. And I think it's okay to emphasize how that is the #1 killer, bar none, #1 killer of adults in the United States. I work with the American Heart Association all the time, and they consistently talk about cardiovascular disease being the #1 killer of adults, and it's so important to emphasize that. Something else that's interesting, Doctor, is this lack of sleep and how it can contribute and, in fact, increase your risk for severe heart problems. Tell me more about that.
Yes, so American Heart Association has now really identified, based on a preponderance of evidence, that lack of both the quality of sleep and the quantity of sleep is an important contributor to cardiovascular morbidity. And poor sleep can really increase your risk of a variety of cardiovascular conditions like heart attacks, strokes, heart rhythm disorders, hypertension, obesity. So getting the recommended amount of sleep for your age group really can improve your cardiovascular health.
It sounds so simple, but, it's so tough these days. We have the phones that have those blue screens that keep many of us awake throughout all times of the day and night. I have 2 teenagers. I constantly tell them you need to get enough sleep because your brain is still forming. It's so important for not only cardiovascular health, but just brain function and cognition. Can you explain more about recommended sleep for various age groups?
Yeah, so, I think, unfortunately, life gets in the way. All of us who have kids know that, kids generally, it's especially teenagers, it's difficult to get them to wake up. And so each age group has different recommended sleeps. For most adults in the United States, at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep is what's recommended. For various categories in a pediatric population, I would refer you to the American Academy of Pediatrics website to get those guidelines. But like you mentioned, sleep is just so important. It affects all aspects of life. We've all felt, we feel so great after a good night's sleep. And I think all of the distractions of life that you mentioned, work, screens and screen time, they all disrupt our sleep in the modern era, and recognizing that that is an important part of taking care of yourself and decreasing your risk of cardiovascular disease can really help you.
Okay, all right. So now that people know how important sleep is when it comes to heart health and cardiovascular health, let's talk about some other methods, other ways that people can improve their heart health. And I understand having wearables that really kind of detect various cardiovascular episodes can help. Can you tell us more about these wearable devices?
Yeah, so wearable electronic devices, smartwatches, can really help monitor a lot of different variables, from your heart rate, heart rhythm, activity levels, sleep hygiene, and can really clue you into different healthy, unhealthy behaviors and improve our prediction for trouble in future. Our researchers here at Northwestern are looking at use of smartwatches to detect a specific type of heart rhythm disorder called atrial fibrillation that afflicts around 5 million people and increases one's risk of stroke. And they're trying to see if detection of atrial fibrillation episode and tailoring therapy to use blood thinners will help reduce the risk of stroke, while also reducing the risk of bleeding and improving the cost of care. So really useful applications for wearables.
Okay, so wearable aids. I mean, for example, I have an Oura Ring right here that I use all the time just to keep an idea on my sleep, on how many steps I get, my body temperature, and just how my heart variability is doing, heart health, if you will. Are there some other wearable devices that you look for to really kind of hone in on cardiovascular health for people out there that are watching?
Well, most smartwatches, I would say, now have the capability to monitor your activity level and heart rate. There's some better ones for heart rhythm analysis, and I think at least for some basic parameters that will help you reduce your cardiovascular disease risk by helping you to improve behaviors like activity. I personally, use a smartwatch, and what I've realized is that, I'm not as active as I think I am, and I'm not as regular at being active as I think I am. So I think that feedback of your actual performance rather than imagined performance really helps us stay regular. And it's simple. The message is walk more, eat less, and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, moving around, that is key, and sleeping. Moving around during the day, sleeping at night, having a well-balanced diet, exercise, that sort of thing. We've only scratched the surface, I know, Doctor. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, and where can people go for more information about cardiovascular health and ways to stay healthy, optimal health?
Yes, I think main message is that most of cardiovascular disease is preventable by individual action, paying attention to your activity level, your diet, your sleep hygiene, and knowing your numbers, blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, and weight. And for more information, please go to heart.nm.org.
Okay, well, listen, Dr. Newman Mushtag, thank you so much. We appreciate your time this morning, and we appreciate you being here on the Action News 5 Digital Desk.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning and happy Monday. We have some clouds in place this morning. Those will be clearing over the next few hours as a high pressure system moves in. That results in sinking air, which gives us a clear sky. That high pressure system, though, moves east as a low pressure system that will disrupt our weather, bring some rain in on Tuesday. Eventually, that low and that front push off to the east. So by Wednesday, we're done with the heavy rain, but on the back side of that low pressure system on Wednesday, we'll still have clouds and maybe even a little bit of drizzle. 20% chance on Wednesday, but an 80% chance of that rain on Tuesday. So let's check out timing. So today, as I mentioned, it's dry. We'll get more and more sunshine as we get a little later in the day. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures around 50, and then overnight tonight into early tomorrow. A few clouds, but still no rain at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So if you have plans to head out the door 7, 8 o'clock, you won't have any rain to contend with. But by the afternoon, this is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, rain pushes in from the southwest again with that low pressure system. You'll have on and off rain continuing pretty much the rest of the day on Tuesday. One of those soggy days where you want to have an umbrella or a rain jacket on hand all day. Where you see this pink color here, that's actually some sleet mixed in Harrisburg, Dyersburg, Tipton, Lauderdale County, and spots like Blytheville also seeing some of that sleet. Temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 50s. Yes, you can still get sleet falling with temperatures that far above freezing, but it won't stick, obviously. It'll hit the ground and melt immediately. We could still see some of that in those northern counties through late that night, but most of us will just see rain, and you'll still have some lingering showers probably through at least 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. By the time you get out the door on Wednesday morning, 7, 8 a.m., as I mentioned, you'll just have some drizzle left over. Here are those rainfall totals. About a ½ inch in Wynne, an inch in Memphis, close to 1.5 inches in Marks and Oxford, Holly Springs, Corinth. Good soaking for us, but no severe weather to deal with. You may have some gusty winds and some rumbles of thunder, but that would be the extent of that on Tuesday. Here's today's forecast. Sunshine, 44 degrees at noon, 50 at 3, mid 40s at 5, and lower 40s by 7 tonight. But your high today is 50 degrees, average is 51. So we're right where we should be for a high temperature. Same with that low tonight around 32 in Memphis. Outside of Memphis, though, in the 20s for most spots, 29 in Covington and Ripley, 27 degrees in Alamo, right around 30 in Holly Springs, 32 in Tunica and Clarksdale, 31 in Olive Branch tonight, lower 30s in Marion, and upper 20s if you're in Blytheville this evening. And then this weekend, temperatures in the 50s, so we actually get a little increase in temperatures for the weekend. It looks mostly dry on Saturday. Could squeeze out a stray shower on Saturday evening, but Sunday's really the main day with rain. Right now we have it at a 40%, so this many days out, it's looking pretty likely that we'll have some showers on Sunday. This today and tomorrow we're around 50 degrees, and then temperatures really drop off behind that front. So Wednesday, your high is only 44, and with some winds still at about 30 miles per hour out of the north, probably feel more like 34 degrees on Wednesday afternoon, 45 on Thursday, and then 50s Friday through the weekend.
Okay, so you've heard about 401ks, health care, but what about child care benefits? As the cost of child care continues to climb, it's become one of the fastest growing trends in business, and Memphis Transit Authority is the latest company to jump on board. Starting this month, Memphis Area Transit Authority will pay $200 a month towards their employees' child care. So the company is partnering up with child care tech app Tutris, which has more than 185,000 licensed child care providers on its network. MATA parents simply just go online, they type in their city or their zip code, and then they browse through a list of child care providers that show how many openings they have in real time or on the app. And then MATA will pay the first $200 of the monthly enrollment, with parents picking up the rest of the tab. Here's what MATA had to say about all this.
I'm actually really excited that we're having this program as a 3-time mom, I guess, with the newborn. This is right on time. COVID has definitely changed what the workforce could look like. Has changed what people are looking for in companies. To be able to provide this additional benefit, I think is definitely great. We have a night shift, we have swing shifts, we have early morning shifts. And so, childcare definitely can be an issue if you have a driver that has to come in at 3:30 in the morning, or if you have a mechanic or someone who works in our maintenance department that works the 12 to 8 shift. So hopefully have childcare that can correlate with those schedules is definitely a plus.
Okay, so Mata, again, partnering up with the child care tech app Tootris. Now, joining us now to talk more about the future of childcare, we have the CEO of Tootris, Jeff McAdam. Actually, he's a Tootris creative director, I should say. Jeff, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, thanks for having me this morning. Happy to be here. And we're talking about Tootris as well, and the partnership with Memphis Transit Authority, and it's an exciting one for us. And we're finding that it is a very common trend that we are starting to see in business, especially in the past year or so. Every month, it feels like we're doubling our partnerships. If we had 2 last month, now it's 4 more companies jumping on this month, and it's because a lot of companies are finding that their parents can't get to work because there's a childcare shortage that's going on. It's not just happening in Tennessee; it's going on nationwide.
Yeah, so Jeff, let's talk a little bit about Tootris. Many of our viewers right now, for the first time, they're hearing this. They're hearing about this app and perhaps how it works. Can you take us through how this thing works, how Mata was on board, the Memphis Area Transit Authority, if you are familiar with that, and how people can get involved?
Yeah, you got it. So what Tootris is a tech platform. It is the largest childcare platform in the country. So at the heart and soul of what this thing does is there's 185,000 licensed childcare providers nationwide that are listed on it. It's kind of like the Airbnb of childcare. So if you're a childcare provider that's out there who wants to market their program, they go to Tootris in order to get themselves out there, and it's free for childcare providers to use. A lot of people don't realize this, but 70% of the overall licensed childcare providers nationwide are those smaller in-home daycares that most parents would never even know how to find. You can't find them in a Google search. You know, I'm a dad. I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I was actually a reporter doing a story on this company about 1.5 years ago. I was going through the childcare search, and I felt like I was banging my head against the wall. Trying to find a place that's a good fit. You could spend weeks, if not over a month, trying to find a good fit. And then this app comes along and it streamlines the process. It helps parents go online with a simple search. You put in your city or your zip code, and it shows you all the availability in your area, and it shows you the openings they have in real time. So it says 3 openings, or it says 5 openings. That way you don't have to pick up the phone and call and not know the results before you even get the process started. And so companies partner with Tootris because they go, listen, our problem is twofold. One, parents don't know where to find childcare, like me. And 2, even if they can find it, can they afford it? And so that's where Tootris comes in. You know, the best thing to kind of combat against rising prices is the opportunity to shop around. So when you know you have 5 or 6 or 7 opportunities in your area, well, now you can kind of gauge program to program which one is the best one for you, whether it's the age range that it serves, the price that it serves, and businesses tap into Tootris for their employees because they say, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to find childcare so we can rely on you guys coming to work and being productive employees. In fact, companies like Memphis Transit Authority say, not only will we let you tap into this platform, Tootris, we're going to up the ante. We want to be able to pay $200 a month towards your childcare benefits in order to just make it a little bit easier. So if you're trying to sit at home and debate, I'm spending $1,500 a month on childcare for my 2 kids. Does it make more sense for me to stay home and just take care of them? If half my paycheck is going to childcare, well, maybe that $200 a month helps ease the burden just enough to make you, feel the incentive to want to stay at work and to let your kids go to a place that you feel comfortable, a quality license program. So it's a win for childcare providers because you have parents coming directly to them. It's a win, of course, for the parents, and it's a win for the employer because they get to hold on to their employee, if that makes sense.
It does. And Jeff, I'm kind of interested because in our Mata piece, we talked about how Mata is putting forward, they're paying essentially $200 a month towards their employees' child care. Is that something where that's pretty standard, right, across the country? Or how else do companies do this?
Yeah, we have two different levels that we see from a lot of companies. A lot of companies just give their employees access to the Tutris platform. So that's level option one. And then if companies want to go a step above and beyond that, they can make that contribution as well. And so Memphis Transit is kind of leading the country. They're one of the companies that say, hey, not only do we want to give access to that platform, but we want to be able to put a little bit of stake in the game and help chip away at it. And I'm looking at Tennessee's average monthly cost of childcare, or yearly, I should say, it's almost $9,000 a year. So, you put $200 a month times 12, you're talking $2,400. That's about 30% of the childcare costs for the year. At worst, infant care is the most expensive, and then it gets cheaper as the kids age up towards the age of 5. And so you get at least 30% of the childcare covered by Memphis Transit Authority by doing this subsidy and this childcare benefit. And what a lot of people don't realize too is, you got kids age 8, 10, 12, and you think, well, childcare doesn't apply to me. My child's too old. That's not the case, because this also applies for summer camps and stuff. And those can get pricey too. You could spend $1,500 on a summer camp. Well, guess what? Memphis Transit Authority is going to pay a sizable amount towards that summer camp as well. So it really serves ages 12 and under. And it's a game changer for young families, that's for sure.
Tutris. So, Jeff, let me ask you something. I'm trying to figure this out so I know it intently here. Our story, we said that MATA is paying $200 a month towards their employees' child care. The company is partnering up with Tutris. Does the money go towards the employee, to the app, the company? How does that partnership work exactly?
You got it. Well, with any benefit, whether it's a 401k, whether it's healthcare, whether it's childcare, it's great that companies want to implement something like that. But some of those can be very hands-on and intensive, and so it's more of a burden administratively. And we wanted to ease all that. So what we did is we streamlined a concierge service, so to speak, right directly through us. So the company, like MATA, says, listen, we want to give each employee $200 a month. You please, Tutris, streamline it through your app, have the money flow into the app, have the parents be able to take it straight out of the app and give it right to the child care provider. So it kind of just comes right through the system and then right into the bank account of the child care provider. So it's seamless. It's almost instantaneous, but it's there on a regular basis. So a parent can count on that discount when they go to pay at the end of the month or the start of the month, depending on how their child care provider works. They automatically see that $200 deduction in their system when they go to hit, send on their payments. It's already $200 deducted right off the top. So it just streamlines right through the computer system.
Okay, so it's like a credit, a $200 credit.
You got it. That's exactly right.
Perfect. Okay, so our viewers, they're looking at this. They're perhaps interested in something with Tutris. They want to get involved or at least see how it works. Is this like any other app? I mean, there's 185,000 licensed child care providers on your network there. Is it just like we, put in the zip code, the city, and boom, we're done?
Yeah, you got it. Exactly. If you just go online to tutris.com, or you can download the app if you got it on your phone. And it's super, super easy. The very first thing you'll notice when you go to that home screen is the search box. You type in your city, type in your zip code, type in your neighborhood, whatever you want to do, and hit enter, and every licensed childcare provider in your area pops up, and it shows you their availability in real time. Lets you look at the pictures if they've posted pictures of the place, if they've posted a virtual tour or a video tour. Yeah, you can do that right there as well. You can see their total curriculum right there on their front page, including like what age range do they serve. And you can even click on their state licensing information. So let's say this place looks good. As a parent, one of the first questions that I always have is, but pictures can always be deceiving. I'd love to see what the state records look like. Have they had visits, and what were the results of those visits? We have it all. It's right on there. You can click on it and you can see, gosh, they were visited twice last year. And what was it for? Oh, clean bill of health. Great. I feel great. Or you can see otherwise if there's different, marks or different notes from a visit in the past. And the great thing about Tutris is it cycles on a weekly basis, a couple times a month too. to refresh the system. So it's always in good standing. We're making sure that childcare providers, the licensed childcare providers, do have their license up to date and that nothing is in default. So we only have the best quality license programs available online for both parents and for employers.
Anything else you want to mention before we let you go, Jeff? I appreciate this. It's been very informative.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, we're just excited. I mean, as a dad, I feel like it's a long time coming. The childcare system in general has just been broken for decades and decades and decades. This pandemic just devastated the entire system even more. We lost over 16,000 childcare programs nationwide because a lot of parents pulled their kids out of programs. They were worried about pandemic breakouts in their own childcare classrooms. And so a lot of these childcare providers and programs didn't survive. They didn't come back. And what few availability was left is only gotten tighter, which means the costs are going up and up. This is the time where employers really need to help out. They can jump in. They can really change the game. Maybe something bad in a pandemic has opened up the opportunity for something wonderful and good, a change that's been decades overdue. So we're excited about it and excited to see programs like companies like MATA taking the initiative to help their employees out.
Okay, Jeff McAdam, Tutris Creative Director. We appreciate you giving us the intel this morning, and good luck to you and the rest of 2023. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. All right. So now let's go to a story that was something that was big over the last couple of weeks. People and police are still searching for this woman, Brittany Watson. Her husband, Kevin Watson, is behind bars charged with the murder of his wife. First-degree murder. Haywood County authorities still searching for her body. The sheriff, Billy Garrett Jr., says a body has been found near the Hillville Loop area where Brittany was last seen back on January 7th. No positive ID has been made. Kevin Watson is currently being held without bond. Two men accused of killing rapper Young Dolph face additional charges. Justin Johnson, Cornelius Smith, identified as suspects in Young Dolph's murder last year. After Friday's court hearings, Johnson's attorney Luke Evans filed a motion to remove the judge presiding over the case, voicing concerns over the potential bias of the judge. Smith and Johnson facing 2 murder charges, 2 theft charges, and more. Johnson is also facing charges with violations of the conditions of his release from the 2015 sex offender case. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee is now in his second term. He was sworn in for that second term Saturday at the Legislative Plaza in Nashville. During the ceremony, the governor laid out his plans for the next 4 years.
We need to protect children in our custody and across this state with a better foster care and a better adoption process.
Okay, and that statement comes after the report ranking Tennessee the worst in the U.S. for foster care instability. 2022 is a wrap, which means tax time's right around the corner. But as you prepare your tax return, the IRS is warning of scams designed to steal your vital tax information. Consumer investigator Carice Jackman has more on protecting yourself in this Watching Your Wallet report.
Tax season is fast approaching, and experts warn scammers are gearing up to steal your critical personal information.
There are millions of dollars every year that fall victim to these scams, and so it's a really huge problem.
Kimberly Palmer from NerdWallet says oftentimes victims are tricked into giving out their tax information.
And they reach out to taxpayers claiming that they urgently need their personal information, their financial information, because you owe taxes, fees, penalties. But of course, none of that is true.
The IRS says scammers trick people in many ways. Sometimes it comes in the form of a text with bogus links claiming to be from the IRS or other tax services. Another common phishing technique, a fraudulent email that appears to be from the IRS or a program closely linked to it. Remember, the IRS will never contact you through social media, via text, or initiate contact with you via email. The IRS says if you receive an unsolicited text, take a screenshot of it and include the screenshot in an email to phishing@irs.gov. Make sure you tell the IRS the date, time, and time zone you received the message and the phone number that received the text message. Remember, never click on links or open attachments from unsolicited, suspicious, or unexpected text messages.
Anytime anyone reaches out to you saying that they're from the government or from some official organization, just to verify.
Jacob Channel from Lending Tree says if you think you've been conned by scammers, reach out to your bank and the IRS as quickly as possible.
The longer you wait, the harder it'll be to get your money back.
With this Watching Your Wallet, I'm Carice Jackman.
Okay, switching gears right now, let's talk about the Varsity Blues scandal. Do you remember what we're talking about here? This is a guy by the name of Rick Singer. He just was sentenced to 42 months in jail because he was trying to get in people who paid him into schools pretending to be either an athlete or pretending to have high scores in order to pass entrance exams and to be accepted into some of these high-profile schools. Well, again, he is sentenced to 42 months in prison. How did the scandal affect testing and college admissions? Many people want to know. And how does this case highlight how much competition there is for selective colleges, the advantages of the wealthy, and how the average student can still compete with great grades and great test scores? We're going to bring in our expert in all this. David Blobom is a nationally recognized expert in the entrance exam and college admissions industry, and he is a friend of ours because we've been talking about him for months before he became nationally known, back when he was, certainly known with us. David, it's always good to see you. Happy New Year. How are things?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year.
So in light of the Varsity Blues scandal and sentencing, how does testing and college admissions change, if at all, David?
Yeah, so for all the media sensation, it's kind of interesting to see that testing and college admissions didn't really change much at all. I mean, there were some tweaks to how students could take the test with accommodations, but basically no changes because this was a very small number of applicants out of millions of applicants. But it certainly highlighted the lengths that wealthy families will go to get their kids into top-ranked colleges. And so for me, what was really interesting is that it highlighted that the SAT and ACT, they're barriers for all students, wealthy students, any student. And so these wealthy families, they couldn't just buy higher SAT and ACT scores through test prep because their kids would still have to learn the grammar, the rhetorical skills, the mathematics, reading. And so they paid a proctor to take the test for them and broke the law. So I think it's important to realize that the SAT and ACT are an equalizing barrier, that all students can do better on the tests, but all students, wealthy or not, they have to learn the content if they're going to get a higher score.
Then why is there such a push to do away with these college admissions tests that we see, the ACT, SAT?
Yeah, so if you look at average SAT and ACT scores and you plot those scores by wealth, you see very clearly that the higher income families, their kids on average have higher SAT and ACT scores. So that paints the picture that SAT and ACT scores, they don't reflect academic content and knowledge and skills, but it looks like it's a reflection of wealth. But really what's happening there is, unfortunately, because of inequality in the US, there is unequal access to quality education. So it's because those wealthy families have better access to good education for their kids that their kids on average do better on tests of academic education. But that doesn't mean that the disadvantaged students, that some of them don't rise above, get great educations and do a lot of prep on their own and get great scores. They can still compete. And that also, just like Varsity Blues illustrates, it doesn't mean that the wealthy automatically have higher SAT and ACT scores. they still have to have the knowledge to do well on those exams as well.
All right, let's talk about those exams. Many of our viewers here perhaps have high school students, and the timeline for juniors when it comes to taking the SAT and the ACT. Let's go over that, and then how many times they should take it, when do they need to be finished with testing, and how they can improve their scores. Let's talk about those things.
Yeah, so I would encourage all students to apply early action to all their top schools and early decision to their very top school, because applying early decision gives you a little bit of a boost in the admissions process. So most of those early application deadlines are November 1st of a student's senior year. So students should try and finish by then. So then we can kind of walk back the timeline from there. So if a student is a 10th grader right now, or I'm sorry, an 11th grader right now, they can still take the March, May, June, August, and October SAT exams and still get their results before the early application deadlines. For the ACT, they can take the February, April, June, July, September, and October exams. So still lots of exams coming up. A lot of families are, it used to be 10 years ago, you really didn't want to take the test multiple times because all of your results would be reported to most colleges. Now, most colleges only see your highest section scores from any exams. You only need to report the test dates that you want to report to colleges. And ACT actually allows you to delete exams for free at any time. So now students can even take the real test as practice. And the real test is the best possible practice. And you don't even need to show those results unless you do well. So you can take the test as long as you're continuing to go up on it and until you hit your score goal if you want.
Let me ask you this, because I know that essays are a component with some of those tests, the ACT and the SAT, and there's something called ChatGPT. What is that?
This is mind-blowing. It's going to change so many industries, and already has. One of the ways that it's changed college application essays is that it can write better application essays than about 75% of high school students. So the outputs that it gives are only as good as the inputs. So you can say, write an essay on why I want to go to Tulane University and make it 500 words. And it'll do that, but it'll be very general about, Tulane, how diverse New Orleans is, etc. But if you give it very specific inputs, like when I was 5 years old, I almost drowned. I was saved by paramedics. Since then, I realized life is a gift. I want to be an emergency room doctor eventually. Write a 500-word essay about that and why I want to go to Tulane. And it will write out in 3 seconds a fantastic essay for you. A very good writer will still be able to write better than it, but it's better than most high school students. The other way that high school students are already using it for their college application essays is they'll write their own essay, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, write this better. And it'll rewrite it, make it all grammatically correct, make it clearer, more concise. And I've seen with my own students that I would say for the average high school student, it maybe doubles the quality of their essays after it rewrites it for them.
That is crazy to me. Wow, yeah. What a tool. I would think that would be almost cheating a little bit. Wow. What do you think?
And yes, it gets into much larger equity issues. I mean, is it cheating? I think so. But then you also have heads of state universities like John Boeckenstedt. He's the head of enrollment for Oregon State University. He encourages students to employ essay editors that not only do, check your spelling and your punctuation, but also your voice, tell you what you should be writing about or not writing about. So it's very difficult that the wealthy actually have access to a lot of essay editing that editing is very ambiguous already. So the irony behind ChatGPT is it actually gives all students access to a good essay editor. Now, I think that they should make sure that essays from the wealthy or the not wealthy, everyone is authentic essays. But currently they don't have a way to do that because essays are not proctored. So students were already making up the content of their essays, or the essays were being written by other people. So there were already lots of problems surrounding authenticity. This just highlights them in a big way because every student's essay is potentially inauthentic now. So they really need to figure out a solution to this.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. My goodness. Wow. Okay. So the SAT, I understand, is going through a lot of changes here, shorter, digitally adaptive next year. What should students and parents know about it?
So for any 10th graders, the first thing they need to know is it's changing. So that's helpful that you even told them that because most don't know. So 10th graders in 11th grade, so this next year when they're juniors, the SAT is going to radically change in the middle of their junior year. So if they're preparing for the current SAT, the runway ends December of this year, 2023. The paper SAT will never be there again. So then if they don't finish by then, they're going to be taking the digital SAT in March of 2024. Now, there's not a lot of practice tests. There's only 4 practice tests for the new digital test. So if students don't finish with a current SAT, or they don't think they can finish with the current SAT by December, they're probably better off going with the ACT because that test is not changing next year and hasn't substantially changed for over 20 years.
And let's talk a little bit about, I know we've talked about this a bunch in the past, but let's refresh everybody's memory about which test would be better for their child, the SAT and the ACT, how to determine that, and how to, submit those scores to prospective universities.
Absolutely. So the first thing that students need to do is figure out which test fits them best. So the ACT, it's more straightforward, but it rushes you more. The SAT, it's more abstract and tricky, but you have more time per question. So that might fit one student better than another. So students should first just Google official past SAT, official past ACT. That'll take them to the SAT and ACT websites where they'll take an official exam. They should print those out, take both of them, and see which one they do better on. And there are concordance tables. You can just Google SAT and ACT concordance table to compare your scores on both. So whichever test is better, students should pick that. And then it's a golden age of information. So there's a million ways they can prep. All students can prep for free through the Khan Academy online. Any student who gets to take the ACT for free, which is 20% of students are on fee waivers, which means they can take the ACT for free 4 times, and they get free online prep through the ACT. But other resources are the prep books that are out. Those are great for independent study. There's also classes, private tutoring, and the National Test Prep Association. They have a member directory, so a vetted list of companies around the nation that can provide great test prep if the student wants those classes or private tutoring just for more accountability and more instruction.
David, very informative as always. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go about the ACT, the SAT, the admissions scandal, how things are evolving and changing?
I would just encourage students to know that they can gain an advantage in the admissions process and gain an advantage in getting scholarships and more merit aid if they have good SAT and ACT scores. And that's not limited to wealthy students. That's just anyone who puts in the time to learn this content, which is available to all.
Great advice. David Blobaum, Director of Outreach, National Prep Association. Always appreciate your informative interviews here in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Thanks very much and Happy New Year.
Good morning and happy Monday. We have some clouds in place this morning. Those will be clearing over the next few hours as a high pressure system moves in. That results in sinking air, which gives us a clear sky. That high pressure system, though, moves east as a low pressure system that will disrupt our weather, bring some rain in on Tuesday. Eventually, that low and that front push off to the east. So by Wednesday, we're done with the heavy rain, but on the back side of that low pressure system on Wednesday, we'll still have clouds and maybe even a little bit of drizzle. 20% chance on Wednesday, but an 80% chance of that rain on Tuesday. So let's check out timing. So today, as I mentioned, it's dry. We'll get more and more sunshine as we get a little later in the day. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures around 50, and then overnight tonight into early tomorrow. A few clouds, but still no rain at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So if you have plans to head out the door 7, 8 o'clock, you won't have any rain to contend with. But by the afternoon, this is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, rain pushes in from the southwest again with that low pressure system. You'll have on and off rain continuing pretty much the rest of the day on Tuesday. One of those soggy days where you want to have an umbrella or a rain jacket on hand all day. Where you see this pink color here, that's actually some sleet mixed in Harrisburg, Dyersburg, Tipton, Lauderdale County, and spots like Blytheville also seeing some of that sleet. Temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 50s. Yes, you can still get sleet falling with temperatures that far above freezing, but it won't stick, obviously. It'll hit the ground and melt immediately. We could still see some of that in those northern counties through late that night, but most of us will just see rain, and you'll still have some lingering showers probably through at least 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. By the time you get out the door on Wednesday morning, 7, 8 a.m., as I mentioned, you'll just have some drizzle left over. Here are those rainfall totals. About a ½ inch in Wynne, an inch in Memphis, close to 1.5 inches in Marks and Oxford, Holly Springs, Corinth. Good soaking for us, but no severe weather to deal with. You may have some gusty winds and some rumbles of thunder, but that would be the extent of that on Tuesday. Here's today's forecast. Sunshine, 44 degrees at noon, 50 at 3, mid 40s at 5, and lower 40s by 7 tonight. But your high today is 50 degrees, average is 51. So we're right where we should be for a high temperature. Same with that low tonight around 32 in Memphis. Outside of Memphis, though, in the 20s for most spots, 29 in Covington and Ripley, 27 degrees in Alamo, right around 30 in Holly Springs, 32 in Tunica and Clarksdale, 31 in Olive Branch tonight, lower 30s in Marion, and upper 20s if you're in Blytheville this evening. And then this weekend, temperatures in the 50s, so we actually get a little increase in temperatures for the weekend. It looks mostly dry on Saturday. Could squeeze out a stray shower on Saturday evening, but Sunday's really the main day with rain. Right now we have it at a 40%, so this many days out, it's looking pretty likely that we'll have some showers on Sunday. This today and tomorrow we're around 50 degrees, and then temperatures really drop off behind that front. So Wednesday, your high is only 44, and with some winds still at about 30 miles per hour out of the north, probably feel more like 34 degrees on Wednesday afternoon, 45 on Thursday, and then 50s Friday through the weekend.
Okay, Andrew Douglas here in the Action News 5 digital desk. Have you really thought about physical therapy if you need it, certainly after a surgery, maybe a hip replacement, a knee replacement? The difference that physical therapy can make in your recovery is huge. Let's bring in someone who knows a little bit about this. Ambrosia Scott, manager of outpatient rehabilitative services with Regional One Health, joins us now on the Action News 5 digital desk. Ambrosia, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing so super well today. How are you?
Doing well, thank you very much. So let's talk about the large role in recovery that the surgery, that physical therapy does have. I mean, we hear about physical therapy all the time, and can you talk about some of the benefits there if you're going for, maybe a hip or knee replacement? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think one thing that people don't realize with the physical therapy is that we also do what we call prehab. So one of the great things about physical therapy is that we can get the patient in prior to having that joint replacement. What that does is that gets them in the best position, stronger position to have a better recovery. So a lot of times we're able to walk the patient through what to expect after the surgery, which gives them a sense of calm to prepare them for the surgery. And then once we get them after surgery, we're taking them through everything that encompasses strengthening their ability to navigate within their home, because many times patients will have assistive devices that they're having to use that they had not used before. They're having to use certain DME to help with their activities of daily living. So we're able to get in and really work with them on every aspect of their recovery, not just being able to get back on their feet again, but every aspect of their recovery.
What about like cardiopulmonary conditions? You know, I mean, there's other things that I know physical therapy can help with in addition to, you know, hip and knees and that sort of thing. Can you talk about some of the other issues involved, carpal tunnel, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So we have seen patients that have had some traumatic diagnosis and traumatic experiences, such as a heart attack. And for patients that have those experiences, they are severely debilitated because of the damage to the heart. So what we get a chance to do is get them back to their full function, get them back able to, like I said before, with the joint diagnoses, navigate their day-to-day activities, physical strength, as well as functional strength. And we see other diagnoses such as carpal tunnel. And with carpal tunnel, a lot of times that's affected with those individuals that may have some type of overuse type injury, or it could be because of their job related duties. And so big thing with them is getting them back to be able to do their job task, helping them to be able to be strong enough in return so that they don't re-injure themselves. And that they can function, because that's a big deal for a lot of people, is that something what seems simple like carpal tunnel can actually interfere with their ability to work every day.
So what can a patient expect from various physical therapy sessions? Are they customized? Obviously, they probably would be customized for each individual patient and their concerns, but what can they expect with every session? Is it an hour long? I mean, take us through the process.
So typically when we evaluate a patient, it could be an hour long. It depends on that patient's diagnoses. And it is very customized and individualized. So we bring the patient in, we go through our treatment protocols as far as assessing the patient, making sure we have an understanding of what's going on. And then we do a lot of education on that initial eval. We want the patient to understand what the expectation is. We also want them to give us their expectation and their goals for therapy, so that it's a comprehensive team effort to get them to where they need to be as far as recovery. And so once we do that evaluation, then together again with the patient, we will map out a plan for therapy, whether it's seeing that patient 2 to 3 times a week for 4 to 6 weeks. It just really depends. It depends a lot on what's injured, what deficits they have, and what goals they have. And so we take them through that. And sometimes the sessions are about an hour. Sometimes the sessions can be a minimum of 30 minutes. It depends on what the patient is able to tolerate when they come in. What we like to do is progress them as we get further into the treatment. The goal of the outpatient is to allow them to be as independent as possible. So we start to titrate a little bit because they're able to do a lot of the activities on their own, and we want that carryover for home. We want what we call calibration. We want them to be able to take those activities, complete them at home so that they have a sense of independence.
What kind of results have you gotten that you could share with us when it comes to physical therapy?
I have been a physical therapist for 15 plus years, and I've had some excellent results. One of the most recent, I guess, episodes that I could think of was a cardiac patient that we had. He was very severely debilitated. This was an individual who had been very independent, had been a former athlete, very active in his community, in his settings, very active at work. And he was, struck down by a heart attack. And so he came to us very debilitated, but we were successful. He was successful in his recovery. He was able to not only return back to work, but he was able to, one of his goals was to be able to return back to going to the gym and completing regular exercise. And so we were very pleased that he was able to go back to those things.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Is there anything else? What else do you want people to remember about the importance of physical therapy before we let you go? Did you get that? Did you hear me?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say, is there anything else you want people to remember when it comes to the importance of physical therapy?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of times people wait to seek out physical therapy services when they have a moment to where it interferes with their day-to-day activity. I think it's okay for you to seek out services when you start to have an injury, and also to seek out services when you're looking to just increase your overall quality of life. Physical therapy can help you from everything from looking at your posture, to help you with function, to help you with how to navigate into exercise. A lot of times we have patients that we end up seeing in therapy that have a desire to increase their health and wellness, but don't really know how to navigate that appropriately. So they go to the gyms, they do what they see on TV, and then they injure themselves. We want to make sure that you're successful in your goals. We want to make sure that you know how to use the equipment, how to navigate that process. We want to get it before the injury starts to interfere with your day-to-day activity, your life, and becomes debilitating. So it is okay to reach out to physical therapy services before it becomes a severe and debilitating injury.
Okay, Ambrosia Scott, Manager of Outpatient Rehabilitative Services for Regional One Health. We appreciate this conversation this morning. Thanks so very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Andrew Douglas here. Right now, I want to focus on imposter syndrome, because that is an issue that you may not know much about, really, and it's important to combat what is imposter syndrome and to better understand it. Let's bring in Dr. Gail Gazelle. She is an assistant professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and a master certified coach for physicians. Dr. Gazelle, nice to have you back on. Good morning to you.
Good morning. A pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about what exactly is imposter syndrome.
It's so important to be aware of what it is. It's this idea that what we know is tiny, maybe as big as the tip of my pinky. And what our peers and similarly situated people know is, kind of massive, as big as the city of Boston. And we live in fear that we're going to be found out, that somehow people will find out how little we know, how smart we are, how compassionate we are, what a good parent we are. It can really cross into any domain. And when they find out, we are going to be the laughing stock of our institution or even of our community. We're going to be found out as a complete fraud. So it creates an incredible amount of fear and anxiety and distress for otherwise accomplished individuals.
So are these individuals that are people that live with this imposter syndrome, are they people already doing a job and then they fear that they are not living up to others' expectations? Or is it a sense of fearing the possibility of what they could do, but out of that imposter syndrome fear, they don't even go for that next position or a next situation?
I think it covers both ends of that spectrum. If you go on Google and you Google who feels like an imposter, you will be amazed at the number of very high-profile individuals who actually have felt like they are an imposter. Michelle Obama, Elena Sotomayor, Jodie Foster has a quote about, oh, did they give the Oscar to the wrong person? So a lot of highly accomplished individuals walk around feeling like an imposter. And as you could hear, I named 3 women. It is thought to be more common in women than in men. At the same time, it can hold us back from achieving our full potential, from really going for it, from going for a job promotion, for example, for entering into a graduate program, for being a leader in our church or in our community. All of that sense of being an imposter can leave us feeling like we're unworthy, that other people are somehow better suited. So it's so important to actually recognize when we're going off into these imposter thoughts and utilize tools to work with them.
Anyone that has a sense of insecurity at any time in their life can have some empathy when it comes to this imposter syndrome. And is that thought and that syndrome, is it ignited by insecurities in the past? Where does it come from?
I don't think we know fully exactly where it comes from, but the fact that it's more common in women than men kind of gives us some clues. We live in such a gender stereotyped society, don't we, that men are this way and women are this way. And for women, it's often about how we appear, how we look, whether we're smiling enough, whether we're pretty enough, attentive enough to our looks. And that can actually create a sense of insecurity, a sense that there's something that isn't really intrinsic to me that people are seeing as my worth. So I think that's an important factor to think about when we look back at the development of the imposter syndrome. Bottom line, though, it's incredibly common in otherwise very highly placed and accomplished people who I think, as many of us walk around, we would never suspect that they themselves are accusing themselves of being an imposter.
No question. So let's talk about ways to combat this, because according to the research out there, 10,000 to 20,000 thoughts our human brain has every single day. And gosh, I mean, I guess that could range in all kinds of different directions. But how do we combat imposter syndrome?
Well, that's the important question, isn't it? And I think you're right on the mark. We need to get to know our own thought patterns. As you say, the human mind is a thought-producing machine, tens of thousands of thoughts per day, many of which are incredibly useful. But when we begin to pay attention more with a mindful attitude of attention, we actually begin to see how many of our thoughts are not useful, not helpful. Self-accusatory thoughts like, I'm an imposter, people will find out that I'm not worthy. And so one really important strategy is getting to know your own thoughts and realizing that while these thoughts are appearing in your mind, you don't have to believe them all. You actually can question them. You can pause and question, well, how do I even know that I'm an imposter? What's the data that I'm utilizing to make this assessment? And then all of a sudden you can realize that it's actually a little bit laughable, that your mind has created this fictional story of being an imposter really on almost no data and certainly no objective data. So I think that's really important to apply very practical mindfulness tools to getting to know our own thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fascinated by this because absolutely mindfulness is key. What about other ways outside of one's self? Are there people, are there family members, perhaps professionals that someone could go to let them know or reassure them that they're not an imposter?
I think that's important, to go to confidants, whether that's a family member or a spouse or a colleague or a coworker, and actually get validation. I felt like I really didn't know what I was talking about when I gave that presentation, just as an example. Can you give me some feedback? In other words, that's a way to step out of the subjective process that our minds are in and actually get some objective data. I think another strategy that's really important is every day to do an inventory of your strengths. Looking at our strengths and accomplishments is a really important counterbalance to this whole idea that we're not the real deal. And so at the end of every day, just to do an inventory, well, what strengths did I evidence as I went through my day today? That's a way to build the muscle of seeing the truth. And we're not looking for some Pollyanna fake assessment of who we are. We're looking for a more balanced assessment. And that's one way that we can help ourselves develop it.
Self-confidence is key, I would think. How common is imposter syndrome out there?
We don't know for sure, but estimates are that over 70% of women experience the imposter syndrome. I'm a physician. I work in healthcare. I coach physicians and physician leaders. And in the over 500 physicians I've coached one-on-one in the last decade, I'll be honest with you, it's a rare one that doesn't walk around feeling like an imposter. And I think that tells us something as well. All the information and expertise that physicians have, all their years of training, all the good that they do in the world, and yet they walk around feeling like an imposter. So I think that kind of validation is important. And for your viewers who may themselves suffer from the imposter syndrome, sometimes when we realize it's not just us, that this is actually a characteristic of the human species, that many of us feel this way, that can also help reduce the sense of isolation that the imposter syndrome engenders.
Dr. Gesell, this has been very informative for our viewers, what you're talking about with imposter syndrome. What happens if one of our viewers, now that they've informed themselves about what it is, sees someone that perhaps shows signs of an imposter syndrome? How should they approach someone?
I think that validation is extremely important. So perhaps to say to that individual, gosh, I can see how troubling this is. I can see how it kind of keeps you acting small in your workplace and in your community. And I want to share with you that I myself have felt like an imposter. So I'm saying that as Gail Gesell, a Harvard Medical School assistant professor. But I think that's something that we can lend to others who are experiencing this. Simply validate that we too experience this, or that, people in high places experience this. I think, again, that decreases that sense that the mind has that it's just us. And so that can lighten the load and actually make one question, step into curiosity. Well, do I even need to feel this? Do I need to keep kind of lording this over myself, so to speak? And is it really helping me in any way?
Great information, Dr. Gesell. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go?
I have a free guide on my site, if that can be helpful to your viewers, www.gailgesell.com. It's called Imposter No More, where I share some of the tips that we spoke about today. So it's free. If that can be helpful to your viewers, please feel free to download it.
Dr. Gail Gesell, Assistant Professor of Medicine at Harvard University. Thank you so much. I really enjoy our conversations. I feel like I learn a lot more after talking with you about the topics that we discuss. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Hugh Jackman, Kourtney Kardashian, Jennifer Aniston, J.Lo, Elon Musk, just a few of the people that swear by intermittent fasting. Is it really safe? How do you actually know you're doing intermittent fasting? What will it do for you? Would it help you reach your health goals in 2023? Let's bring in Dr. Amy Duffy here. She is the international best-selling author of Normal Doesn't Have Side Effects, and she has been a part of the Action News 5 digital desk in the past. We appreciate you coming on once again, Amy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I'm so excited to be here and share this information. It's super fun.
Yeah, I am a person that loves to intermittent fast myself. I do it at work, and I have kind of like a, 10 to 12 hour window. First, explain what it is for our audience out there, and some of the different ways, because there's all kinds of different ways, I guess, to define intermittent fasting, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of ways. I kind of narrow it down to two different ways when I'm talking to my patients. I have the calendar way and I have the clock way. So the calendar way, this makes it a little bit more easy to process. Pick 2 days of the week, make sure they're not 2 days in a row. And on the 2 days that you X out here, you're going to fast those 2 days. On the other days, you can eat like normal. You can also adjust this different weeks throughout the month. So let's say you got a hot date one night, you want to adjust your time or something going on at work. So this way, it's super easy. A little bit more difficult to fast for a whole day. A lot of people start with something more like the clock way. So you're going to pick a time frame, a window, just like you described, where you're eating, and then a window where you're fasting or not eating. So let's imagine that you're going to start eating at noon and you're going to stop eating at 6 p.m. and then you don't resume eating until noon the next day. This makes it super easy because you're focused more on when you're eating and not just what you're eating. So you don't have to count carbs. You don't have to count calories. You want to have a glass of wine? Let's have a glass of wine. How about a beer? Sure, have a beer. Or you can even eat your favorite chocolate. Now, you're going to get better results for weight loss and overall health, cardiovascular, reducing the risk of diabetes, et cetera, if you're going to choose healthier foods, right? So eat your apple, have a salad for that meal. But it really is super simple and easy to follow. I get a lot of questions, Dr. Duffy, is this safe for us to do? And intermittent fasting can be really safe. In fact, we're seeing a lot of data. That's why doctors are loving it, that it really works, not just for weight loss, for actually reducing our risk of disease. So it's very safe, and we're really recommending it to a lot of people. The few people who need to pay attention, if you're diabetic and you're monitoring your blood sugar with either a blood sugar monitor, like when you're checking your blood on your finger, or you have one of those continuous glucose monitors, you want to make sure you talk to your doctor about that. This may be something you need to adjust. Or perhaps you're on medication and that medication needs to be taken with food, then you need to pay attention to the timing there or chat with your doctor about that. Outside of that, intermittent fasting, super safe, really easy to follow, and it works. That's why it's the #1 fad diet in America.
Is it really #1? Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. #1 fad diet in America. Gotcha. Let's get into specifics about the best candidates for intermittent fasting. Is there a certain body type? What about age groups?
Kids are growing, so we certainly don't want to restrict them. Usually kids are eating more for natural hunger, as opposed to sometimes we just want to eat because we're feeling munchy or something like that. So probably you want to wait until they're older teenagers or adults before they start fasting. But kids will actually naturally fast. They just don't eat when they're not hungry, right? So that's okay, age-wise. As we get older, really, there's no age limit where you would not want to intermittent fast. So that's pretty easy to do. Really, every body type is great. And one of the best things about intermittent fasting, it's not like the keto diet. Keto is okay, and you're going to get results from that, but it's really short-lived. It's hard to live in the keto world for a really long time. But once you start to get used to intermittent fasting, this can be something that you can do for life. So it's really a great thing for anybody who's trying to either maintain their weight or really try to lose weight. If you're going to lose weight, you may want to avoid some of those fun foods that we were talking about, at least in the beginning, until you get to your maintenance weight. But really, that's what's so great about intermittent fasting, is it really can be for anyone.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that I've enjoyed. I do it usually at work, and I don't generally do it on the weekends. But questions around intermittent fasting, because then some people ask, well, what about someone who doesn't eat all day or goes several days and all they have is water or coffee or something like that? Is that safe? I always hear that when you do intermittent fasting, or when you fast for, let's say, a day or so, it really helps your cells. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's actually studies that show really the magic happens when you're looking at reducing inflammation or regeneration of damaged cells, happens when you get into the 18 to 21 hour fast window and beyond that. So, for weight loss purposes, it's really great to start and simple to start with something like an 8-16 or a 16-8 fast. But when you're really trying to correct some dysfunction there or reduce inflammation, you want to get into those longer fasts. And there are some studies where doing a longer, 24-hour, 36-hour fast can really be beneficial, especially like for cancer. We're kind of starving the cancer, if you want to think about it that way. So there's some studies that really look around that. Of course, you want to make sure that you're hydrated. And again, if you're struggling with low blood sugar, things like that, then you just want to pay attention to that. Sometimes there are some foods that are allowed in the fasting. So some of those fasting days, there's some articles that talk about you can eat up to 500 calories, and that still would be considered a fast. There are other people who do what they call one meal a day. And basically they're fasting throughout throughout the day and they just have one meal. So it's not even a window of, time 6 hours. It's just one meal a day. Again, the term intermittent fasting is important. So if you go to one meal a day, that's okay, but you may want to adjust that throughout your week in terms of what time that meal is, because if you do that every day for the rest of your life, your body's going to adapt to that. And then it's not really intermittent anymore. So, once you get into it, you may want to start adjusting that time frame a little bit.
What does it do for your metabolism? Does it speed it up? Does it slow it down? Do we know?
There's kind of this idea that people who are gaining weight or can't lose weight have a slow metabolism. And then people who can, it seems like they just have an unlimited amount of food that they can eat, but they're still skinny, have a fast metabolism. I don't know that that's really real. I mean, there's so many different variables that go into that. So intermittent fasting, I would say probably, whether you want to call it metabolism, but when you're fasting, it actually speeds up your body's ability to get stored fat. So you're not starving yourself. If you go into starvation mode over a long period of time, your body starts looking for energy in the form of your muscle. So it's going to use up muscle, where the ability with intermittent fasting is actually gathering your fat cells. So your metabolism improves in the fact that it's helping you to burn fat instead of burn calories from muscle or your food, basically. So it's really going to help you lose more fat.
All right, so if our viewers are interested, we've been talking about this for a few minutes, they're interested, they're like, okay, let me try this out. What would be your recommendation if someone wanted to try out intermittent fasting, Amy?
Yeah, that clock way is the easiest way, is just pick a window, between 6 and 8 hours that you're going to eat, and then the window between 16 to 18 hours that you're fasting. The easiest way, just like I described, is to start at noon, end at 6 or 7 p.m. That way you're sleeping through a good, if we're getting the 8 hours of sleep we're supposed to, you're sleeping during most of your fasting. A lot of people aren't starving first thing in the morning. You can have tea, you can have black coffee. You just don't want to consume a lot of calories. Make sure, you're still well hydrated. And then you just start eating again at lunchtime the next day. That is the easiest way to get started.
Awesome. Amy Duffy, we really appreciate your analysis, your insight on this. And thanks so very much. Happy New Year to you. Much success in 2023.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Let's talk about health care changes for older Americans. They're going to be seeing some changes in 2023. Brand name drug prices, they've grown faster than general inflation now for more than a decade, meaning a growing number of patients have had to go without necessary medications. That's why AARP has been working hard to convince lawmakers to allow Medicare to negotiate prices with pharmaceutical companies, levy tax penalties on drug makers that raise prices more than inflation, and then cap Medicare Part D out-of-pocket costs. Let's talk about some of those changes for Medicare recipients right now with Lee Purvis, AARP's Senior Director of Healthcare Costs. Lee, good morning. Appreciate you being here. So let's talk about the changes that Medicare participants will be seeing this year.
Yeah, there are 3 really big changes that all Medicare beneficiaries should be aware of. Starting in January, recommended vaccines are now free for all Medicare beneficiaries. Also, Medicare beneficiaries who are in prescription drug plans will now have $35 cost sharing for their insulin. And another really big important change that you already mentioned is that drug companies will now be penalized if they increase their prices faster than inflation, which will hopefully discourage them from taking those big price increases that we've been seeing lately.
Okay, and how does this compare to 2022? I mean, you mentioned what we can expect in 2023. How does that compare with what we saw last year?
So last year, frankly, none of those protections were in place. People sometimes for vaccines were paying upwards of $100 as a cost sharing for their vaccines. And we also saw people who were taking insulin that were paying on average around $50 per month for their insulin, sometimes as much as $100 per month. So this change is a really important one because it's going to result in a lot of savings. And when it comes to those price increases, AARP has been reporting on prescription drug prices for a very long time. And the reality is nothing was in the system to stop drug companies from taking those big price increases, and now something is there because of this new law.
All right, well, let's talk about vaccines for Medicare beneficiaries this year. What's the change and what can they expect?
So previously, vaccines could be covered under your Medicare prescription drug plan. And depending on your plan and where you were in the benefits, sometimes you could have cost sharing of hundreds of dollars. And now that's going to stop. All recommended vaccines will now be available for free for Medicare beneficiaries. So that's going to hopefully reduce some obstacles that people may have had to getting the vaccines that they need.
We lost your audio.
Lee, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can. Thank you. You're back.
Okay. Yeah. So apologize for that. I was wondering if you could kind of give us some insight into people here in the Mid-South. Of course, we're in Tennessee, but we also cover Mississippi and Arkansas. Those people on Medicare that use insulin, how is that going to change in 2023?
So specific to Tennessee, there are about 83,000 people who are currently using insulin. So that is going to be a really big change for them because their cost sharing is now going to be hopefully greatly reduced down to $35 or potentially even less. And we know that there have been a lot of people who use insulin who have been facing really high out-of-pocket costs. So hopefully this change is going to take away kind of the struggles that people have been facing in terms of affording the medications that they need.
So let's talk about some of the other changes here. You're going through a lot of changes for older Americans, Medicaid, and or rather Medicare recipients. What about some other changes? When will we start to see those issues out-of-pocket prices? I know you mentioned a little bit off the top. Any other changes this year?
Yeah, there's some really big changes coming our way that will have a really big impact for a lot of people. The first is that Medicare is going to start reducing the amount that Medicare beneficiaries have to pay for their prescription drugs every year. Right now, there are some people who pay upwards of $10,000 for their prescription drugs when they're enrolled in a prescription drug plan. And by 2025, Medicare will limit the amount that people have to pay every year to $2,000. We know that more than 1 million people are paying more than that. So this is going to be a really big change for a very large number of people. And another really big important change is that Medicare is finally going to be allowed to negotiate the prices of popular prescription drugs. We're going to know the first 10 drugs that will be negotiated by the fall of this year, and the negotiated prices will become available in 2026. And that's not the end. There are going to be more drugs added every year, and we could see as many as 60 drugs with negotiated prices by 2030.
You know, a lot of our viewers are tuning in, trying to decipher some of these changes for 2023. Is there anything else you want to tell them, you know, with regards to these changes? You've mentioned a lot already.
Yeah, this new law has an incredible number of provisions that are really going to help dramatically reduce prescription drug prices and costs for a lot of people. There are millions of people in this country who are on Medicare, and AARP is very well aware that many of them have been struggling with high prescription drug costs. And the provisions in this law are going to go a long way towards making sure that everyone has access to the drugs that they need.
Okay, and then I'm sure that there's a place online where people can go for more information, Lee. Where can people go to get this information you've talked about and perhaps some other information as well?
People who want to learn more can go to aarp.org/rx.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, Lee Purvis, we really appreciate everything that you've said with regards to breaking down some of these changes for those older Americans. I'm sure that they're going to be thrilled with some of these changes you mentioned, and then where they can go, aarp.org, to get some more information on that. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Andrew Douglas back here in the Action News 5 digital desk. What is the correlation between your health and the environment? Joining me now to talk about that and really give us some insight into what we need to do to create a healthy environment is environmental specialist Douglas Mulhall. Mr. Mulhall, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thanks very much for having me.
I appreciate it. So I understand you've written a book about this topic. Let's talk about how important the environment is around you in order to create that healthy living, that healthy life.
Well, I want to start with some good news, and it's something that affects a lot of people in your viewing area. There are a lot of clinics in your viewing area, as well as across the entire United States, that are focused on treating a condition known as peripheral artery disease. That's a nasty form of heart disease that blocks the arteries in your legs. And there's actually an epidemic of amputations and surgery going on because of this condition. The good news is that thanks to a medical breakthrough at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami, these patients are getting better. And when I say getting better, I mean that the circulation in their legs is being restored. Now, this has been published in leading journals like the Journal of the American Health Association. So it's the Heart Association, excuse me. So it's quite credible. But the question is, why? Why is this happening? And the answer is in the toxic soup of metals that came out of these patients when they were being treated. And these metals are coming from our environment. Things like lead, chromium, cadmium, gadolinium. A lot of these are found in products. Some of them were in leaded gasoline years ago. So here we have a classic example of how your environment is directly affecting your health, and how when you target those environmental impacts, you can actually reverse the damage and restore health. So it's really a major breakthrough when we're learning to focus on the environmental impacts on our body.
Let's talk a little bit more about some of those environmental toxins that you mentioned with all these metals here. What does it do to the body specifically when you have these metals in your environment?
Well, it does a lot of things. I mean, these things are carcinogenic. They mutate your genes. But one of the big things that they do is they change the behavior of your genes without changing the genes themselves. And this is something, it's a new field of study. It's only been around for about 10 or 15 years. It's called epigenetics. So I call it epic genetics because of its huge impacts on all species, including human beings. So these actually, it's an on-off switch. So these metals and a lot of other environmental influences can turn these genes on and off. Now, the really important thing here is this is reversible. So it's not like snipping a piece off your genes like they do with, CRISPR technologies and stuff like that, where it's really not reversible. This is a reversible process. And that's why this therapy that I described is having success, because it's actually helping the human body to turn those switches off by removing the cause of the problem in the first place.
So, Douglas, how do we know that we live in a toxic environment? Is there kind of a checklist, or is there, one of these things that we can tell our viewers, if this happens, then you know this? Is there some way to really kind of figure out what our environment is, if it's toxic or not?
Well, actually, you can pretty well assume that we're surrounded by these metals, and I'll just give you one good reason why, and that is air pollution and water pollution. So these tiny microparticles that are in the air and water that come from industrial pollution and highways and all of these things, they actually have these heavy metals hitchhiking on them. And so they get into your body, you ingest them, or you breathe them in, and it's a real problem. But the good news is, actually, there's something that everybody can do about it. First of all, I would strongly suggest that anybody who has peripheral artery disease look into this new therapy that is at Mount Sinai Clinic. And you can see it by going to our website at natureoflongevity.com. So that's the first thing that you can do. But if you want to prevent it, what you can do is, guess what? Control your indoor environment, because most people spend up to 85% of their lives indoors. And the quality of that environment you can control. So you can, for example, make sure that the air filters in your air conditioning systems are cleaned frequently and are very high quality to keep these pollutants from getting into you. So the control over the air quality and the water quality in your home is something that you yourself can do something about, and it's a relatively easy thing to do.
That sounds great, because we all want clean air, clean water, particularly in the indoor environment that we're in. You mentioned that some of these effects that happen to us in the body in these toxic environments are irreversible. Let's talk about ways to, clean your environment, and if there is kind of a toxic environment, ways to reverse those toxins.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, this therapeutic approach is one of them. But the other thing that you can do is in the foods that you eat. So a lot of processed foods are contaminated with heavy metals from pesticides and from the soil. I want to be clear about one thing. It's not just pollution. These toxic materials have been with us ever since humanity walked the earth because they occur naturally in the soil and in the water. So they actually have been putting an upper ceiling on our longevity and how long and well we live for quite some time. So it's not something that's just happened very, very recently. So what I would suggest is start buying organic foods. Now, that's not a complete solution, but all of these things are designed to reduce the impacts on your health. The other thing that you can do is if you have a good water filter installed on your tap for your drinking water. And, drinking water out of bottles won't necessarily help you because some of these heavy metals are actually found in the plastic that is in these bottles. So you have to be careful about that, especially when you heat these bottles up. So the best thing you can do is filter your air, filter your water, purchase organically sourced foods. And if you do have a problem, look outside the box. Because a lot of physicians are simply not trained in environmental technologies. I'm not a physician. I'm an environmental health specialist. We work on creating products that are healthy for people. And that's the other thing that you can do, by the way. When you're buying products, have a look at what's in them and, contact the manufacturer and ask them, do you have any of these toxic materials in your products? And don't be guaranteed that legislation is going to protect you because it doesn't. There have been a lot of studies that have shown that these heavy metals are found in baby foods, in consumer products. So consumer beware. You've got to really take care of yourself on this one.
What about plastic? I hear so many bad things about plastic. It's becoming more and more prevalent about how plastic is inside our body a lot of times, and it's affecting everything from reproductive rates to longevity to just overall health.
That's absolutely true. But the interesting thing is it's not the plastics themselves that cause the problem. It's the additives. So that's the problem with plastics. It's what goes into them because plastics, when you just leave them by themselves, actually naturally degrade. So what do? They put a whole bunch of additives in them to stop them from doing that. And it's those additives that actually cause the difficulty. So, plastics have gotten a bad name, but actually they're remarkable products. It's just that they need to be redesigned. And actually that's what our institute does. That's what we do. We redesign these products so that these plastics can be safe for humans and for the environment. So it's not.
Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Research shows that loneliness and isolation can have negative effects on our mental and physical health. Our nation's veterans are not immune. To combat this issue, the VA has developed something called the Compassionate Contact Corps. It's a program pairing volunteers with lonely and socially isolated vets. Let's talk more about this program with Prince Taylor. He is Deputy Director of the VA's Center for Development and Civic Engagement. To discuss this program and more, Prince Taylor, good morning. Thank you for joining us. How serious?
Good morning. How are you?
Is that? Doing well, thanks. How serious of an issue is this?
Well, unfortunately, research reveals that loneliness is prevalent across an array of populations. And so even the U.S. Surgeon General before COVID mentioned that we were at risk of an epidemic of loneliness. And so at VA, we look at all of that through the lens of veteran care. And we know that our veterans are more susceptible because of high trauma, high stress, burnout, and even some clinical issues where they actually might feed off of each other. And so all of those things put our veterans at greater risk for clinical conditions such as depression, heart disease, and suicidal ideation.
So, Prince, tell me about this program, the VA's Compassionate Contact Core program.
Yes, well, it is a virtual, award-winning, non-clinical social prescription program where we pair trained volunteers with veterans that are lonely or socially isolated that have been referred to the program by their VA clinician.
Okay, and what kind of feedback have you received about this program? You said it's award-winning, apparently.
Yeah, more than apparent. It is, yes, it's award-winning. The feedback we've received has been overwhelmingly positive. Our veterans, some of them, this is the only legitimate phone call that they get that week, that month, and so they really appreciate it. But we also have veterans in the program that are happily married. So you can be happily married and still experience quite a bit of loneliness because there are these different spheres of loneliness. We've done a survey, and over 85% of our veterans told us that the program makes them feel less lonely. And over 92% said it makes them feel that the VA cares about their overall well-being, which is great because that goes to speak to our trust scores with our vets. And I would also say that it's not just the veterans and their families and their caregivers that benefit from the program. So do our volunteers, so do our clinicians, and we've also gotten a lot of great feedback from some of our partner organizations like American Red Cross, American Legion Auxiliary, and AARP.
How much of this has been exacerbated by the pandemic where we all had to lock down, we all had to be separated, that sort of thing?
That's a great question. We don't have the exact numbers for that, but we do know that our numbers with participation in the program have continued to increase. Since the pandemic started, we have reached over 3,000 veterans across the country with about 1,100 volunteers. And last year, they made over 13,000 phone calls around the country.
Is this program specifically designed for older veterans?
That's another very interesting question. Initially, it was designed just for the older veterans and their caregivers, but right now we have veterans from their early 20s all the way into their 90s participating.
That's great news. Okay, so we've let our viewers kind of know a little bit about this program. Where can veterans, where can volunteers go and get more information?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, let me say that our volunteers are priceless to us. They can get into the program or any of our other great volunteer opportunities by reaching out to their local VA medical center right there in Memphis, or they can go to volunteer.va.gov online. And for our veterans and their families, they can just let their VA clinician know that they're interested in the program. It's really that simple.
Okay, well, listen, Prince Taylor, we really appreciate you, and thank you for informing us about this great program and award-winning program that's helping veterans out there. We appreciate it.
Thank you for helping us get the word out. Really appreciate you.
Good morning and happy Monday. We have some clouds in place this morning. Those will be clearing over the next few hours as a high pressure system moves in. That results in sinking air, which gives us a clear sky. That high pressure system, though, moves east as a low pressure system that will disrupt our weather, bring some rain in on Tuesday. Eventually, that low and that front push off to the east. So by Wednesday, we're done with the heavy rain, but on the back side of that low pressure system on Wednesday, we'll still have clouds and maybe even a little bit of drizzle. 20% chance chance on Wednesday, but an 80% chance of that rain on Tuesday. So let's check out timing. So today, as I mentioned, it's dry. We'll get more and more sunshine as we get a little later in the day. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures around 50, and then overnight tonight into early tomorrow. A few clouds, but still no rain at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So if you have plans to head out the door 7, 8 o'clock, you won't have any rain to contend with. But by the afternoon, this is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, rain pushes in from the southwest again with that low pressure system. You'll have on and off rain continuing pretty much the rest of the day on Tuesday. One of those soggy days where you want to have an umbrella or a rain jacket on hand all day. Where you see this pink color here, that's actually some sleet mixed in Harrisburg, Dyersburg, Tipton, Lauderdale County, and as spots like Blytheville, also seeing some of that sleet. Temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 50s. Yes, you can still get sleet falling with temperatures that far above freezing, but it won't stick, obviously. It'll hit the ground and melt immediately. We could still see some of that in those northern counties through late that night, but most of us will just see rain, and you'll still have some lingering showers, probably through at least 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. By the time you get out the door on Wednesday morning, 7, 8 a.m., as I mentioned, you'll just have some drizzle left over. Here are those rainfall totals. About a ½ inch in Wynne, an inch in Memphis, close to 1.5 inches in Marks and Oxford, Holly Springs, Corinth. Good soaking for us, but no severe weather to deal with. You may have some gusty winds and some rumbles of thunder, but that would be the extent of that on Tuesday. Here's today's forecast. Sunshine, 44 degrees at noon, 50 at 3, mid 40s at 5, and lower 40s by 7 tonight. But your high today is 50 degrees, average is 51. So we're right where we should be for a high temperature. Same with that low tonight around 32 in Memphis. Outside of Memphis, though, in the 20s for most spots, 29 in Covington and Ripley, 27 degrees in Alamo, right around 30 in Holly Springs, 32 in Tunica and Clarksdale, 31 in Olive Branch tonight, lower 30s in Marion, and upper 20s if you're in Blytheville this evening. And then this weekend, temperatures in the 50s, so we actually get a little increase in temperatures for the weekend. It looks mostly dry on Saturday. Could squeeze out a stray shower on Saturday evening, but Sunday's really the main day with rain. Right now we have it at a 40%, so this many days out, it's looking pretty likely that we'll have some showers on Sunday. This today and tomorrow we're around 50 degrees, and then temperatures really drop off behind that front. So Wednesday, your high is only 44, and with some winds still at about 30 miles per hour out of the north, probably feel more like 34 degrees on Wednesday afternoon, 45 on Thursday, and then 50s Friday through the weekend.
Okay, that does it for us here on the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. We have Action News 5 at midday coming up at the top of the hour with Ariana Poindexter, and then we'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for another edition of the Digital Desk. Take care.